What's good, Internet? It is Monday, February 24th, 2020, and you are listening to Waypoint Radio, a special edition, an Outer Wilds Spoilercast edition. Dun, 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 dun. Actually, we should have played at the end, right? That's what we need
right,
to
yeah.
That's what we need to do. I'm Austin Walker, joining me today.
That's the wrong. We could open with the
nice,
dun,
yeah, exactly.
Dun.
Oh, it's so good. That's Kato and Patrick are here. We are finally going to talk about Outer Wilds, my game of the year of last year for sure. Patrick, you just finished.
Would have been extremely high on mine, yeah. Like,
yeah,
I do it.
Fucked up.
Disco Elysium, Outer Wilds, like, man, January and February just getting fucked up on video games.
Yeah, it's great. I love it. If only someone had been waving the banner for Outer Wilds. If only someone had suggested that it would be a game people might like.
Damn.
Y'all both played it. I think maybe before we get into we got a billion questions. Like 5,000 words of just questions came in. So thank you to anyone who wrote in. We will get to those. In fact, I think those will guide us quite a bit. But I just want to start by putting the questions to y'all. Like, obviously, I am now on record. If you want to know what I think about this game, you can go find that a billion times. But Kato, you've now beaten it. Patrick, you beat it. You've sat with it now for over a week, probably. How are you feeling about that game now? You said pretty high. It would have been pretty high on your list last year.
Yeah, it would have been pretty high. Just a wholly unique experience. I mentioned before that I'm hot and cold on puzzle games or games that entrust a lot of explicit trust to the player, because that's I gotta imagine as a designer, such a difficult thing, because like, who is the hypothetical player you're building towards, and how much do you give them opportunities to raise their hand and say they need help? Where do you find that so that the sense of accomplishment is still there while also not alienating players in the process? And I can't remember the last time I've played a game that straddles that line as incredibly as Outer Wilds, and it being one that I didn't really have to do a whole lot of getting stuck and poking around. There were just like one or two times where I was just sort of like, I don't want to come back here and do this again. Am I missing something? And I would just kind of look up an area and I felt comfortable. But like, I did most of the game on my own or with the information given to me, and it was just so profoundly satisfying as you worked your way through those things. And even the fact that it seemed to account for happy accidents. I know we've mentioned that on previous pods where everyone's probably got a moment, and maybe now we could be more explicit about
we're going to be
those
really
moments.
Spoiler filled from top to bottom here today. Yeah.
Is having those moments where for me, it was, being on the tornado planet and realizing that one of the tornadoes was moving in a different direction than all the other ones.
God, the fact that you just intuited that is incredible.
I cannot.
It was pure happenstance. I wasn't looking for it.
Okay.
I just had I was just sort of like screwing around in the area. I'd read the theory that like, there must be a way to get beneath the surface. And then my immediate thought was like, okay, well, that's got to be related to these tornadoes somehow. And so I was just kind of screwing around. And so what happened was I had in my head a theory of like, I wonder if you can use the tornadoes as like a tunnel to get down there. And I tried it on one or two, and then just the third one happened to be the one that was going the other way, got through, and was just like, what the fuck just happened? And so then it wasn't until 6 hours later that I found the room that like spells it out for you, so you could take that information and go back. I'd already done that hours ago and completed that part of the arc. And then just the fact that you can do that, right? The fact that you can piece those together through accident, through experimentation, and it doesn't break the experience. Because I think games are often, you can, you play a Fallout game, right? Or any sort of adventure game where like you grabbed some solution to a puzzle and it's like you meet the NPC and you're like, hey buddy, you want to do this? Oh, you've got this thing? Cool. Thanks for doing that, And Outer Wilds is obviously different in a lot of ways, but I like how it accounts for a lot of different player behaviors that you can quote unquote undermine what maybe is the intended experience, but nonetheless feels like you've authored your own.
Totally.
And it came off super high on this game. Probably definitely would have made my list if I had played it last year. But yeah, that kind of the way that this basically what it feels more accurately simulated than any other game, even the one that's going for full realism, like as far as aesthetics goes and all that. It's just like they've made this like clockwork world, and that's why there's so many openings, because it's just like they've set it loose, right? Like they set up the things to do the things like, and kind of like, you know, fit the physics engine is what it is, and that's you're going at it, you know. And so much of that is it's really interesting. Like I feel like I had two different modes of play in this game. One was like I'm fucking around with physics just to see like, can I slingshot this planet? Am I gonna overshoot? Like, and then the other one was like trying to like really follow the lives of these people, of the Nomai people, and like the kind of heart-wrenching through line there. Really it's just wild, because it's like it feels so much like all of the like kind of just puzzle elements and the kind of clockwork and physics based elements don't feel like they should go together with such a like, I don't know, it's something about like when you see games with like a lot of physics in it, I feel like
you like assume like, this is going to be more not arcadey, but not a literary game, not a game that has that's exploring themes, not a game that's going to dig into emotions. It's going to be like playful in this way that's either very like goofy and it's like a sim comedy game, like the whatever goat simulator. Whatever goat, that's the
whatever goat.
Or it's going to be a hardcore military sim like Arma or something like that, but instead this is this other thing that is using that simulated world to try to communicate something about big ideas.
Yeah, and like the making that simulation work so well kind of definitely makes it feel that much more like a real place, like and gives it a sense of real history to me, because you're seeing that history play out, like the like last bit of that history play out over and over again.
I definitely want to recommend people go watch the No Clip documentary about the game. It's super insightful and interesting because of how distinct this game is in terms of how it works compared to most games. I think that, you know, as games journalists, we often overestimate our ability to understand the way a game works or the way like what a game engine is or the way a game, you know what I mean? But even with the limited knowledge I think I do have about the way games work, watching that studio talk, the people from that studio talk about everything from the physics stuff, the fact that like they have to track anything that could be it's like a weird like echo of the game's own like thoughts and meaning and ideas and rules. But like if you have your probe somewhere, it has to be, if you have your probe next to a geyser on Timber Hearth, and you are on the Hourglass Twins, it needs to still track if that geyser on Timber Hearth is shooting in case that probe gets shot by the geyser. Do you know what I mean? Likewise, if you have your ship somewhere, if you have it's all running in such a way that there's a point at which they can't abstract it. And things like watching the artists zip around the world with their camera upside down, because the tools to build video games aren't meant to build spheres in this way. So if you like, there's a bit where they're showing like placing an object on the planet, on the underside of a planet, and like hitting right on the keyboard, hitting D or whatever it is to move the camera that way, moves the camera left because you're objectively upside down at that point. And like they had to just build with tools that weren't necessarily built to build a game like this.
Oh my God.
It's fascinating.
It's also a student project that became like, you know, this big thing. I think like one tiny detail that blew my mind.
Yeah, you can go play a version of this. This game won the IGF award in 2014 or 2013, a version of it, a different version of it before it got a huge art pass, before it was even made by this studio. It was just a bunch of students who made it in a school. And it's sick. It's still like this game. It is this game minus some of the mystery stuff and minus certain more recent developments. But like, the twins are there.
You can see a lot of the game.
Yes,
right.
100%.
Like I remember the one I saw was that kind of like solidified how much the game is actually simulating and not just faking, was like when you go through the museum in the early part of the game, and they're like those balls that are in like on a table.
Yeah.
And the game says like, hey, like, you know, like the gravitational pull of like the moon, adjust this. And I was like, yeah, of course. Yeah, okay, it does. Like, sure. And then like reading this explanation from the developers, like, no, actually, like the moon that is orbiting like the planet, like when it moves is not because like we've detected the player is there, thus, you know, execute, you know, 10101, like have some gravity happen. It's like, no, you could be there and nothing happens because the gravity isn't affecting it. And if you wait long enough, you will see it get affected by the gravity that is actually simulated in the game. And I think that's like a small example of like the larger systemic work that's happening.
And it's easy to talk about all that stuff and get caught up in the technicalities of it and lose sight maybe that like it's like poetry to watch, right? Like it really is seeing those tornadoes on Giant's Deep, seeing the sand fall from one twin to the other is just like the first time you start to explore these spaces, like, and then you go in there and there is literal poetry and there is literal discussion between people. You like, for me, some of the best moments of this game early on, and I'm curious about y'all, like where those high points are pretty early and kind of where you went first and stuff like that. But for me, whenever I entered a space where I was like, oh wow, this feels almost lived in a weird way. So like the Sunless City or whatever that's called on the Ember Twin, the Dark Bramble, like huge, like 4-story, like cityscape that's underneath there. Like it's like, holy shit, like there's so much here to dig into. Each of these things has so much history, has so much to tell about what this culture was. And also there's a black hole at the middle of this planet, right? Like on top of everything else, I'm trying to solve a puzzle using a black hole.
Where in order to reach a critical point, you need to wait for a piece of that to go through the black hole so that you could go through the black hole.
Figuring that out was one. I mean, it took me way too long to figure out that particular puzzle.
Yeah,
I tried so many times to just like jank my way into that tower, and
I figured it out by accident. I just happened to be like out there in that area. Once I'd realized that's where all the geometry was going when it was falling through, I was like, oh, that's right. Because when you fall through the black, like that's the way the game hints it, is like it figures at some point you are going to fall into that black hole while platforming. You will appear there, and then in your head it will plant the seed that, oh, maybe I should come back here and re-explore this geometry. Maybe there's something to discover. And I knew that in theory, but didn't actually put it into practice. It was just that I think I was out exploring. I was fucking with the meteor. I forget the name.
The interloper. Yeah.
Which is a great name for a meteor.
Yes. Especially given what happens fucking with the meteor.
Right. And I was fucking with the interloper. And at a certain point when I hadn't quite timed out with the sun, you know, blazing on it and melting it, and then you can go down there. Around the time where if you screw the... What?
You didn't know that's how you got in the comet?
You can get in the comet?
Kato, what?
Yeah, dude.
Kato.
You don't have to do this. You don't...
Right,
I don't think you actually learn anything critical.
I don't know.
Oh, wow.
What?
All right, well, let's pause. Let's pause.
Okay.
Let me finish this thought.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And then maybe we'll pick it up from there.
Yeah.
I think that's an interesting, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So I will just say, when I was exploring the interloper with the thing there, if you screw up the timing around the time where you'd have to start the loop over again, you are kind of in the vicinity of the where you get spat out from the black hole. And at a certain point, I just started kind of like screwing around and waiting around there. And that's when I realized that piece, which is, you know, one of the what do they call them? Like the trials, the quantum trials is one of the final ones you're supposed to find is that you can actually
knowledge.
Yes.
Yeah.
Knowledge. Yes.
Yeah.
Great name. Because there's the other tower, but I don't remember what the Giant's Deep Tower is called. But
that one's the trial.
Yeah.
That's the trial.
Quantum trials.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So you just saw it and you're like, oh shit. Let me get in there.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I'm sure like the intended path was like you find that because it's one of the last things you're like doing towards the end of the game. Yeah, you'd find that, you know, while screwing around and realize there's no way up there. And then, oh, I bet, yada, yada, yada. And so instead, I just happen to be there, right place, right time, which again speaks to the genius of the game and how it allows you to have those moments in different ways. Or to be like Kato. And also, I understand why he didn't find that.
Totally.
Like, You could only do it once, right? On the loop unless you have to go to the interloper.
I think it loops twice, close enough to the sun that it melts.
But you have to wait a long time to do it the second time.
Yes, yeah, because it goes far away, and then maybe you don't have enough time even to explore the whole interior. I don't know. So
Kato, if you start,
I saw that there was
start the loop,
signals under the and I spent a long time looking in those cracks. Like, how do I get in? They said I could get in here. What's going on? And then eventually, I just I don't know.
Moved on.
I moved on. I got distracted and never went back before I finished. But God, so if you
go there straight from the start of the loop, basically, and then maybe about a minute or two in, it will pass very close to the sun. And I discovered I didn't put it all together at first, but I was just like, oh, okay, I'm checking off the list of things to look for on the map. I don't really have a next thing to explicitly do. I'm on the interloper. It goes near the sun, and all of a sudden I hear. And I'm like, the hell is going on? I look beneath me and the ice is disappearing. And so a layer of the ice in a certain part, like one of the poles that they're exploring
it's like
in a different spot.
It's the front of the comet will crack away, will melt away.
The part that's facing the sun.
That's the part they said in whatever whatever the writing was there that says oh yeah, we can get in on the sun side of the comet. And I spent a fucking long ass time
looking for a hole.
Yeah. Wait, so does the ice come back?
As it goes away.
Yes.
As it goes away.
You have 45 seconds to
liquefy.
You basically need to know where to be looking.
Yeah.
And then once the ice melts, you get down there, and once you're in the cavern structure, you have all the time you need to go see the end of it. But yeah, that's that essentially provides the answer to.
And the end of it is right. Yeah.
Yeah.
What?
So
what produced the heat depth of the universe?
I just assumed.
So inside, you end up finding a couple of. You find the recorders of all the nomai. There's 2 nomai in there, and you find a lot of ghost matter. And what you learn is the ghost matter, the kind of green glowy aura stuff that shows up in your probe's camera, that kills you if you walk into it. It was brought by the interloper, and their final recordings are holy shit! If this thing blows up, it's going to kill everybody. And then their next one is we gotta go tell everybody. And so
fuck.
For me, this is an incredible moment because I'm sure this is true for at least one of you, definitely someone listening. For most of that game, I was like, I love these nomai, but they fucked up. It's their fault that the sun blew up. It's
they were
their
screwing
fault.
around with some stuff that maybe
shit.
They didn't need to do.
Exactly. Yeah. And in fact, sometimes bad luck, sometimes and also, who knows? Maybe they shouldn't have screwed around with the ghost matter comet. I don't know to the degree to which observing it and testing it could have maybe. I don't know. The story does not exactly. It does not say that touching it made it do this. It does not say that touching it didn't make it do this. But it explodes. Ghost matter spreads through the system, and it instantly kills them all. They are extra susceptible to it. That is what wipes the nomai out inside of the solar system.
Fuck.
Yeah, this is why they're all dead, and this is why they look like Fallout corpses. You know what I mean?
Right. I always thought that was a little weird, but I assumed that it was eventually just they died out.
Yeah, no, they died in this terrible.
It was
bad. Yeah. Sorry.
Shit.
It sucks.
God
but up until that point, and I found the comet pretty late in my journey. I was like, okay, so they're trying to cause a supernova.
Yeah.
I guess that killed them somehow. I couldn't. There was a jump there. Because then the other half of it is the moment that you go through the sun station. And did you do that? Did y'all both get okay? And learning they couldn't do it.
Right,
They built,
it didn't fucking work.
they built the thing to take the energy, but they couldn't set the thing off.
Yeah,
is also just a brilliant moment of needing to rethink what you see is happening.
That definitely felt. That was also, I think, that was kind of a linchpin in a through line I had of thinking that what the end of this game was gonna be, of okay, this is a tool that they've set up. They're talking about reverting. They're literally talking about reverting a supernova. There must be some way, and it kind of was great that was there, even though that ended up not being what happens. Right.
Totally.
It was it kind of they put in these moments where you given what you know, given what most people who play games assume about games and what you your goals are. Like they kept dropping these hints of like, oh yeah, obviously, like we're gonna use that to save everyone. Like,
yeah, I definitely thought for most of the game,
yeah,
that this was going to be a game that wrapped up with me going back in time and stopping the Nova at least. Maybe even
reverting
bringing the Novi,
like,
maybe even recover. You know what I mean? Like because video games, right?
Or going to their civilization somewhere else and being like, "Hey,
we made it! Wow, they all escaped. They all got out of here. They're living on the eye of the universe, whatever." You know, I'm like, not so much.
Yeah.
And we'll get there. We'll talk about the ending for sure. I'm curious for y'all. Was there anything early on where what was like let's just like this? Where did you go first? You know, you get the keys to the rocket ship. Where do you go? Do you remember?
Yeah.
Where'd you go?
I remember my first loop very well because it fucking destroyed me. I went to the moon.
Yeah.
I went to the moon. Met
the moon meaning Timber Hearts moon, not the quantum moon.
Whatever it's called, rock something. Atarock.
Yeah.
Explored there. I was like, okay, this is cool. Actually, I looked down at Timber Hearth from the moon. I was like, oh, what is this crater on here? And I go down. There's that seed of Dark Bramble, right? Where you figure out that throwing your probe into it gives you a signal like up in where Dark Bramble is. And I'm talking to the person there. I forget exactly who that is, but they're like, there's a Harthians? Yeah, there's a Harthian there that you're talking to about, like, what is this big seed? I wonder what it does. And as I was talking to them, the Nova went off behind, and it basically just kind of enveloped from, like, over the ridge where that crater is, and just, like, and I was like, holy shit. Like, because I was, like, I was interacting with an NPC as that happened, it was such a, like, all these people are dead. Like it hit me because I didn't realize how long the loop was. So I was just like, fuck it. I'm going to spend as much time as possible in this tutorial area and talk to everyone, go through all the dialogue. Like, I really spent time in that first town.
Yeah.
Which, given the end of that first loop, it turns out apparently the clock doesn't start until you get the launch codes.
Yeah, it doesn't start until then. Yeah, you still get a 20. Like, that first session can go really long.
Right. You know? Yeah. I spent a lot of time in that town. I was like, oh, yeah, look at all these people. This is great. I'm going to go explore the...
Dead.
Fucking
dead. Gone. Got him.
Oh, it hurt. Like it was rough. And like, yeah, I will never forget that just kind of like moment of realization and like having, I don't know, it wasn't that much time that I spent there, but like I did everything that you could do without a ship on that planet before leaving, basically. And it like, that was enough time to really endear me to the like idea of these people. And so, yeah, that was my first loop.
Yeah. Patrick, do you remember where you went first? Did you also do the moon?
Yeah, I followed the signals. Like, sure. And I think one of the first signals, I don't know if it was the first loop or, it was the first loop or two, or like, once I kind of like got my feet steady in playing the game, was when you find, the emergency signals, like the escape pods that like give you another, and I think what the first escape pod that I went after like took me to Dark Bramble like extremely early. I felt much earlier than I was probably supposed to go there. It's like, hey, there's all these like friendlier planets that you can go explore before you go to the weird fish maze.
Dark Bramble was absolutely my second planet because I was at that seed, and I was like,
you throw that
I threw my pod in there.
Like,
my probe in there and went straight to Dark Bramble. Got 8.
Yeah, I bet.
Did not go back until the very end of the game because I was fucking terrifying.
Those fish are terrifying.
I think the first time I died in Dark Bramble was like, I just didn't have enough speed going in to get somewhere, and then I like, you can turn around, and and I eventually just stopped basically. Like, I'm sure I had, I don't know if you would ever actually run out of momentum, but like the number wasn't moving, and so then. Just like kind of like turn the camera around, like turn the ship around, which doesn't trigger the giant fish monsters.
Yeah.
And but I saw one near me, and I was like, well, I wonder if I could just like tap the analog stick and like tap and just, just like, fuck.
They have tuned the speed of those fish so perfectly that they just like jump off the line and they're just like there. It's so good. It's so scary.
Yeah, the noise they make too is, especially the first time, because I did not see it as I drove by.
Right.
And then there was a noise behind me, and then the teeth.
Yeah, just those teeth closing around the front. Oh, it's so good. What the fuck just happened?
Yeah.
One time I don't know if it hit the ship weird or what, but my ship broke apart while they were trying to attack it, and so they like one of them ate the ship, but I was just free floating in Dark Bramble by myself, and I'm like. Because that's one of my favorite things that happens is the front of. You ever notice? Has this ever happened to you, fellas? The front of your ship will you'll be like, "Why is my ship not controlling anymore?"
Oh, and then you turn around and the back half is gone,
and then the front half moves away from you forward.
Yep.
And I'm like, oh shit. And so it's like me and Dark Bramble by myself, being like, okay, you know what? I am just gonna fly towards a fish. Just eat me.
Just go.
Let's just go. Let's just let me face my fears and move forward. That's what Kingdom Hearts taught me to do. I'm gonna get into some of these questions because I think we have so many questions I'd like to get through as many as we can, and also because they're going to get us to interesting conversation. I think this one comes in from Claire, who says, "Hey Waypointers, I will try to be as brief as I can with this email, but this game makes my brain happy, and it's hard not to gush about it. There's a whole bunch of things I want to ask about this game that made me ask so many questions, and so many that aren't questions, so much as prompts for y'all to talk about cool things that this game does, like how the interloper isn't connected to anything else on the rumor map. Wild. How could it be? No one else went there. You're the first one since it. Anyway, I have, however, narrowed it down to one question. As I explored the solar system and discovered more about the Nomai and their plans, I always had a running theory about what exactly happened to make the Nomai disappear and set the sun to explode. At one point, I hypothesized that the sun station was a time machine that would send the sun into the past over and over to instantly harvest the energy it would radiate over its lifespan. I delighted in every time that I found some new evidence that blew my theories out the water. My question is this: did any of you have any running theories about what happened as you were playing? Were you ever disappointed to learn they weren't true? When did you realize what was really going on? Thanks so much for the 5-star podcast and the 5-star game recommendations. It's probably my favorite game of all time. Cheers, Claire. Thank you, Claire. Did you have theories the whole time, or were you just like, let this wash over me? And
I did have that one theory of like, once I found out that they were trying to harvest the supernova, and there's like a line somewhere in there where they're like, don't worry, they won't kill us because we figured out this time loop business and everything's going to be fine. I was like, oh, surely we're going to use the time loop to somehow revert the sun to an earlier state or something. And that was my theory for most of it until I got into Ash Twin, which I did really late.
Oh, right. I mean, getting into Ash Twin was the last thing I did in this game, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a puzzle that's been broken since launch, or has been not broken, but they've patched it a number of times. They released another patch with a different like prod in that direction or like a month ago. So, if you had trouble getting to Ash Twin, you and everyone else who's played this game, it is, I think, the one like clear, obvious knock against its design is you can do the thing that's at launch, you could do the thing that was supposed to get you into Ash Twin, and it just wouldn't trigger sometimes because you weren't there at the right particular moment.
Wait, what?
Yeah. Or not in Ash. Sorry, am I talking about Ember Twin? Yeah, no.
You're talking about
the core, where the warp core is. Where you have to where the sand is coming down.
Right, we have to look. You have to look up as the
sand comes over.
The sandstorm goes over.
Yeah. So at the time, when that game launched, if you ran in there when it happened, which was the solution,
right, there
was a chance that instead of being on the ground and getting teleported down, it would lift you up too quickly,
right,
and you just wouldn't get teleported down.
Oh yeah, no, that's straight up happened to me even post patch.
Right, so that happened to me.
So that's
for
one of the
hours. I thought
it's one of the reasons I had to.
Yes.
Oh, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I was just saying that I looked up a walkthrough for that bit because I was like, I think I'm doing I feel like I'm in the right space. I did because it didn't work. I was like, all right, well, maybe it's below.
Maybe there's another.
I just stood on the sand and took out my phone and just read Twitter for the entirety of a 22-minute loop,
right,
watching the sand go further and further down. at different parts of the planet, just maybe wondering if there was a different way in. And
at that point, no one had written in
case.
yet to tell us that there is now a meditation or a rest at the
I never got
campfire
that.
thing.
I don't know.
Wait, what?
Where do you get that?
I have no idea. You can wait at the campfires in advance time.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
Oh, but
you need a campfire.
No, but isn't there a? Is there a power
There's
you
also
can
a
get?
thing called meditation that you can get. That's from Giant's Deep. That's talking to the Hearthian on Giant's Deep, who tells you how to meditate. And that meditation is just a soft reset. It just starts. It kicks you back immediately to the top of the loop instead of doing exit game. Which
I talked to.
You have to talk to him again. Go back. You gotta go back. I think that's the one. He's the one person, or they're the one person who knows. Right?
Yeah.
There's the person on Giant's Deep is also caught in the loop.
Right.
And it's like, yeah, man. Weird. Sometimes I get bored. I just meditate.
Wait, that was the Giant Deep person?
I think so. Yeah, I'm 90% sure it's on Giant's Deep.
I thought that was the Dark Bramble person was the one who was also caught in the loop.
Maybe it's that. Listen, it has been 10
fair.
months since I played this game or whatever, right? But one of them, I thought it was the Giant's Deep person who taught you to meditate, but maybe I'm wrong. We'll teach you how to meditate.
Well, one of the Hearthians.
Yeah, which is just a button. It's just to go into the pause menu and hit meditate. But I didn't know about the sit at a campfire thing, or it wasn't in the game. It wasn't in the game when it launched.
Oh, really?
That's also has been patched in.
Oh, okay, cool.
For usability, which I think makes sense and would make that work better. Anyway, you said you got there early or late? You didn't inside the Ash Twin, you were saying.
No, it was very late.
Okay.
But I didn't have a problem kind of on accident. That tower has that bridge over it, and I hit under the sand to just see what would happen, and it didn't lift me. So I was like, oh great, and I walked in and it worked.
Perfect. That's the way it's supposed to work. 100%. That's what I did the first time, and then lost like 3 hours trying to solve that a different way because it didn't work.
Did anyone go back and do the thing that you can do in
the core?
In the core.
The duplicate?
The duplicate.
I didn't. Did you?
I read about it.
Yeah, I saw Will Smith do it.
Heard about it. I didn't. I don't actually know what happens.
A duplicate of you is there, and
well, you can talk. Yeah, you can talk to yourself.
Yes,
that's good.
Yeah,
that's
it's really cool looking. We got a couple of emails in about that. But yeah, I didn't do it. I watched someone else do it, and it's fascinating that they did that. And I don't know that it like. I wish I would have done it myself. That's what it is. Like it's such a game of like you can tell me the thing all you want, but if it had happened to me, it would have blown me away for sure. In terms of theories, like I said, I definitely thought like the Nomai had fucked themselves over. I think the big final understanding of like no, this is everywhere, which you get pretty early, or I got pretty early because I don't know how it happened, but I ended up getting almost all of Dark Bramble by mid game. Like I'd found the vessel, I had gone inside. Like I had at the point at which I saw the vessel and understood that it existed. I started to think like, oh, am I going to take this ship somewhere?
Right.
And in there is where you can find that one wall of text. That one in this game. There's the wall. There's like the ship log, and then there's the other one that is like the messages from all the Nomai.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh well, it's the end of the universe, so we're gathering in the last place that will die, and we're hanging out. And I was like, oh shit, everything is dying.
Right.
This is way bigger than I thought it was.
Yeah.
This is terrible. And that was the point at which I started to rethink what the game might be about for sure, or like what both what it's about and what's happening moment to moment. Patrick, did you ever develop any theories, or were you pretty much eyes on the prize?
I let it wash over me, and then the moment I started thinking about what could happen, I saw the quantum moon and then saw it disappear and then realized that it would appear again if I just turned around a couple of times in the night sky and went, man, fuck it, whatever. Like, let's just go. I'm just going to, I'm good. Like, I'm just going to I get the moment that the quantum moon became a thing late in the game that I had read a lot about and then, stumbled into inadvertently. I was like, wait, I thought that's not... I don't know, man. Okay, let's just keep trucking. I'm just not going to worry about it.
You met Solanum. Solanum, is that right? Is that her name?
Yeah.
Well, it was even before all that.
You were just saying,
before
just
I
seeing
had just realizing that in this world was a moon that was there and then not there. That it appeared based on you seeing it. And then when I tried to land on it and I just went through it and it disappeared, I was like, okay, let's just open up that map and let's just start checking things off. I'm not going to worry about this right now.
A fun note about that map, which I think is like the thing that makes this game really work for a wide audience.
Yeah.
Does not work without that map.
They put it in I almost said an hour. They put it in a year before that game launched. For all of the builds up until that last year, it did not have any sort of internal tracking. And obviously the play...
It makes sense though, because why wouldn't you wouldn't do that until like the game structure was in a place where you could think, how do we want to communicate information to the player?
From watching that doc, it sounded like they just weren't going to include anything like that. And then playtesting happened, and they were like, "Oh no!" And so what they said was like, "That's just our design doc. Like it's just the map." Of their internal tracking.
Right.
I don't know if it's word for word the same summaries, but once you think of it that way, like, oh shit, they probably just have that in an internal wiki, an internal whiteboard, like mind maps or software, and it is just what it is.
Yeah.
It's like, dude, without that thing, I would have been done. I would not have gotten through this game. You know,
I would have enjoyed
so many notes.
I would have enjoyed some time with it, and then been like, oh, I think I'm done.
Yeah, cool. I read some stuff.
Yeah,
that planet. One planet
seems
is cool.
This seems
because you just don't. Sometimes you don't know if what you're looking at is important in the clue sense versus the theme sense,
or even the like having something that will give you something else to do if you ever get stuck and frustrated.
Yes.
Like for some reason, I thought I could scale up into the what's it called, the Black Hole Forge. I thought you could.
You can. You can.
What?
You absolutely can.
You can?
That's how I got up there.
Are you serious?
There's the 2 ways. So the Black Hole Forge is the place inside of Brittle Hollow.
Yeah.
That is the top. It's the top floor of that, or the bottom floor, depending on if you're looking upwards or downwards.
Yeah.
And I fully did not. So I cleared out Brittle Hollow. This is like my big fuck up. Was definitely one of the biggest fuck ups I made in the games. I missed the room, or maybe I saw it the first time through. There's like the room with the lever you hit that raises the anvil, so to speak. It raises the descended platform.
Yeah.
And you can ride that up to the top, right?
Can you?
Yes.
Okay.
How did you get up there?
I teleported.
All right, you can teleport.
Yeah, you
Also, the first thing I did,
I've done this so many different times.
I looked up and saw the teleport pad on the ceiling, and I thought, that's just the teleport pad that's on the surface leaking through.
Oh.
And that's why I was like, obviously I must be able to scale it up.
Right.
It wasn't until much later.
So I've now told you that there are 3 ways to get there without teleporting. One is jumping onto that fucking anvil thing. I'm calling it an anvil because it's called the Forge.
Right.
And it like resembles an anvil loosely, I guess.
Kind of, yeah.
You ride that thing up as it raises.
Right.
The second,
course.
and that was my third solution. The second solution was get my fucking ship in there.
My God!
You can jack your ship in there just right into like the hole where the forge is lowered, and spin and fly it up to the top and spin it around, and it'll stick on the ceiling because it has the crystals.
The gravity.
And
crystals.
the third way is to platform your way through the broken elevator. You can totally do it. It's not meant to be done. You're like pixel perfect jumps. I did that also.
I spent a long time getting 3/4 of the way up that thing and then falling and then being like, there must be something else.
No,
I'll figure it out later. I'm gone.
Well, so then I did that, and then the first time I got up there was through the platforming tricks or through the ship.
Yeah.
I was like, well, there's nothing up here because I had missed the switch that raises the forge. So it was like, well, now what? Now I'm fucked.
Right.
You know, please, there's a teleport pad right here. Go downstairs, hit the flip.
Yeah.
So I missed a lot of things like that at first, which I think is, again, part of the joy of the game is very much like, let me just beat my fucking head against this thing. And then you step away and you go like, no, right, okay. Here's a small little note from Sankis, who says, the Nomai children in Outer Wilds have sloppier handwriting than the adult Nomai.
Yeah.
This isn't a question, sorry, but I thought you'd like to be aware of this fact that devastated me emotionally. It's such an incredible touch. That is extremely good.
It's very good.
That is good.
It also was part of my theory of like they just died out.
Right.
Was because you see generations start to happen.
Yeah.
And it's just like, oh, they just like lived until they didn't at some point. But I mean, obviously it was a little more dramatic than that, it turns out.
But you're right that like there is the thing about this interesting about their story is they show up and there's this great like burst of excitement. I mean, like
there's a sense of urgency.
There's a sense of urgency first because oh my god, one of our pods got lost.
Yeah, what's going on?
Other pods escaped the dark bramble seed. Okay, hey, look, we're close to the eye of the universe. We could figure out this eye of the universe shit.
Yeah,
and it's a combination of like how do we save our people, how do we get society built, and then also how do we get the eye of the universe, and then it does kind of gradually become just life. And it's like, oh well, the urgency that's felt in some of those earlier messages is replaced with a sort of like quiet curiosity.
Yeah.
Which is cool. B in Toronto says, "Hey all, one of the things that compelled me most about Outer Wilds was how effectively it compelled me to create theories about the universe and how different cogs in its clockwork world functioned. One of the places I first visited was the Interloper, and upon reaching the central chamber filled with ghost matter, the gears in my head started turning. Can you imagine getting the fucking Interloper first? God. We learned that such a large quantity of ghost matter could have disastrous properties were it not encased in ice, but later in the cycle, the Interloper gets swallowed up by the sun before it goes supernova. I'm not sure if it's ever confirmed, but to this day, I believe the Interloper's crash course into the sun triggers/accelerates the supernova that eventually ends your cycle. How about yourselves? Do you have any moments of this game that made you feel truly clever for connecting the dots and discovering something new, either narratively or mechanically? I think the Quantum Moon was like just working out how to land on it was already one. Like that entire sequence is the most I feel like I've cracked the code to the universe. Yeah. Realizing how I could like move the tower across the kind of the path of the Quantum Moon and like towards the north end,
right?
And like getting it up there and being like, okay, all of that was super cool. Any of the quantum stuff, I think, felt so organic, even if it's not theory crafting, it's just rules learning.
Just the small moment of being on the Quantum Moon in that tower and turning the light on and off, just and being on a different planet each time. So good.
God, that stuff is great. I'm trying to think if there's any other puzzly stuff that I was like, oh, I fucking learned. I got that. That felt good. I don't think so. I think those are.
I already shared mine with the tornadoes.
Yeah.
That was my aha.
It's maybe some of the stuff around just. I feel like are we missing a planet? What's a planet? Okay, wait. Timber Hearth plus its moon.
Yeah.
The twins. The Giant Steep, the water planet.
Brittle
Hollow.
Dark
Bramble. That's it. And Interloper.
The Interloper.
Okay.
Yeah, I think
maybe
so.
You know what? I think maybe for me it really was the Dark Bramble stuff. Feeling like I got through that pretty early and like understanding how using the probe to navigate that space. It was something that was like, I just got that. I just intuited like how that works. And just intuited. They designed it in a way that would communicate it. But I learned it pretty quickly without having read it.
And that scene on Timber Hearth.
Right, exactly.
was like the first, like, oh shit.
Ross wants to know, so many aspects of this game have stuck with me in the months since I played it, but none more than the music. I think composer Andrew Pralo did an incredible job in putting together a soundtrack that's awesome in the literal sense and intimate in equal measure. How many sci-fi games open on the strumming of a banjo? So many of my favorite moments in the game are entwined with musical cues, wandering through Timber Hearth for the first time, finding Rybeck in the depths of Brittle Hollow, getting to the heart of the Interloper. But I want to give a special shout out to End Times, the track that signals the end of each cycle. There's a subtle variation on that theme which plays when you have the ability to finish the game, and hearing that kick in as I sped towards my ultimate destination, having finally connected the docks was so thrilling. Yeah, holy shit.
Made me not want to fuck it up.
I fucked it up.
It was like, this music's great.
Did you get that game
I only want to hear it once. It's not going to be nearly as inspiring a second time.
That music is incredible. That whole run is incredible.
Yeah.
I got the warp core late. So for people who don't know, the way we should have paused and set up some of this stuff a little bit, but the final run is that you get this warp core and you basically need 3 pieces of the puzzle. It's like Carmen Sandiego. You need the ship, the Nomai ship. You need a warp core to power the ship, which is what they've been trying to get all the power into, basically. Or I guess no, they're trying to get the power into they're using a warp core to power the sun state or to power the loop machine, the time travel machine.
Yeah.
Right. And then you need the coordinates of the Eye of the Universe, which they get via the sun-going supernova, which powers a probe, the ability to launch a probe so powerful that it can send a message back in time. So you need to get all those pieces. Then you get the warp core, you travel across the system.
Wait, is that where the probe goes?
What?
The one that launches every single time you wake up?
Yeah. That probe is finding the Eye of the Universe. Yeah. Which is why I think it goes in a different direction each time.
Every single time.
Because it's a quantum.
Yep.
The eye is quantum.
God.
So the eye is changed where it is, maybe? Anyway.
Yes. No, that totally makes sense.
So it sends back those coordinates. You have the coordinates. You have to rush across all of the system into Dark Bramble, which is brilliant design in the sense that is the place you have to go the slowest.
Yeah.
You can't just jet through it. And so there's this like, come on. I want to hit the accelerator so bad, but these fucking fish are going to eat me. And so I got the warp core very late in my cycle. And I went, you know what? I should just start the cycle over. I'll meditate. But I'd already taken the warp core, which meant the time machine is broken.
I did this too.
And I was like, and it just immediately was like, dead.
You've died.
Game over. I was like, fuck, god damn it.
I thought for a half second, I was like, I guess there's not really saves, so it's not like it's not the end of the world if like it deleted your save, but it would have been sort of fitting for the game to be like, yeah, you just got to start from scratch. Like, we had timeline over.
We had someone write in who that is exactly what happened, and they let it ride. Evan wrote in and said, did any of y'all get the bad ending? I didn't feel like going back to Dark. I didn't feel like going back into Dark Bramble to uncover a question mark. I found out later it was the ship. So when I was holding on the ship's core in my hand, I had no idea there was some place it was supposed to go. My gut said to outrun the sun's explosion, and I ended up living. So like they got in the ship and just left.
Yeah.
But with nothing to do, I killed myself and got a true game over screen. I took it and I literally uninstalled the game. My immediate reaction was muted, but in watching the good ending, I appreciate my ending more. It started as a game about exploration, but it turned into a game about solving this particular puzzle. The game that I enjoyed playing was long over, so when I got to the game over screen, it rang true. I just wanted the loop to be over, and I welcomed the darkness.
All right. Well,
shout outs to you, Evan.
That's
that's a mode.
Yeah.
I think it's worth finishing this loop.
Absolutely.
Or finishing this game.
Just for the music.
Just for the music. That moment's incredible. Obviously, that last performance is incredible. The kind of performance you go out on.
Yeah.
And just the way the music is used and not used. There's lots of quiet moments of you just like
absolutely
breathing in space or not breathing in space. And I noticed early on that all of the different instruments line up and become a single song. So that moment at the very end didn't necessarily hit as strong for me. I noticed that because, the probe that gets shot, one time I was like, I'm going to chase it. I'm going to find it.
Yeah.
And if you move quick enough, you can get to it.
Oh, shit.
There's nothing there. That's like one of the other things like that maybe is a little disappointing is you can get to the probe, match speed with it. It's like outside the solar system and you're just stuck waiting. Like there's nothing there. You see it, but what happens is you get far enough away from the solar system that when you turn back with your signal scope on, all of the signals have overlapped. So if you have the Outer Wilds like exploration team signal on, all of that music converges. And so you hear that song early, which is sick. I mean, you've heard the song anyway, it's a major theme.
Totally.
But hearing it like in world like that was very cool.
Yeah.
Any other musical moments? I'm trying to think.
I loved when one of my favorite personal bits would be when you would hear the end state music for the end of the loop. I'm glad that it started before it. Like it either could serve as a hey, if you were, if you need to finish reading some stuff in this area, like wrap it up so you don't have to come back here.
Finish your answers. You know, you're 5 minutes.
Yeah, 100%. Well, because there's a version of that where it's like, oh, that clip drops and then 30 seconds, like the explosion happens.
Right.
Because the explosion, then it takes like 30 seconds, a minute for it to actually kind of play out. I appreciated that it was more of like a warning. But what I found myself doing was that in more instances than not, you get to the end of a run and like, there's not enough time to really do anything. I'll just kind of screw around for a little bit before I get out of here. I would try and wait until the clip would play and then just try and find a new spot to watch like the supernova play out, like in some other different pretty part of the universe. Like, cool, I'm just going to plot myself here and just wait for death to come, but the prettiest death possible. And so I'd be propping myself up on like different parts of the environment and then just I wish the game actually could have let you play an instrument. Like that's what I would have done.
So bad.
Like give me a guitar that I can like tap an A button to do a little banjo as I wait for this Independence Day blue wave to come hit me.
Incredible. God. Just give me if they had somehow one unlockable and the unlockable
let you pick an instrument at the beginning.
Yeah, that would have been the best.
Like just have them in your ship. Like, oh hey, you're a harmonica guy. That would have been
That would have been so sick. God damn it. With that, let's take a quick break. When we come back, it looks like the next question we got here uses the word existentialism, so that's good.
Right.
Let's take a quick break. We'll be right back. All right, we are back with a question from Kevin. Kevin says, "Hey, Waypoint crew. Obviously, there's going
Hey.
to... Hey. Hey, Kevin. How you doing? You all right? All right, good. Obviously, there's going to be some time dedicated during any spoiler discussion about Outer Wilds to talk about the game's themes around existentialism. Do you guys fall more on the side of terror or of comfort when it comes to how the game interprets the terror of existential crises? For me, the game presents existence as the act of being observed and remembered. It's why the loop only starts when the statue looks at you for the first time and stores that memory in a visage-like mask. It's why the observatory on Timberhearth doubles as a museum. It's why there's such an emphasis on the quantum mechanics that are so critical to the game's design. So, at the conclusion of the game, when all the lights go out, and the last thing the player sees is an illustration, not a 3D rendered model to explore, but something that feels explicitly extra diegetic, of the universe that comes after the Hearthians and the Nomai, I'm left with more of a sense of dread than comfort, considering there's absolutely no trace of the peoples that existed before. Or did they? Though this seems like an interesting way to frame these questions, thought this seems like an interesting way to frame these questions. Curious about your thoughts. Thanks, Kevin. I think it's a really smart through line here of thinking about observation and remembrance as being very key to the way the game frames a lot of meaning. Totally. And I think that that's in some ways, for me, I come out hopeful regardless. But I think the hopefulness is that this is an act of the final acts that you make in this game are acts that are necessarily of compassion and altruism, because you're not going to be remembered. This is not a way for you to achieve immortality or remembrance. It is you facing a crisis and saying, how do I build a world? Should I build a world that is better than ours, that is different than ours, that is next? How do we decide what comes next if what we have now can't continue? Which to me is the kind of one of the ecological messages of this game. And it's a rare ecological message, because right now a lot of the messaging that we have, and I think it's understandable and important, is how do we fix what's broken? How do we address the crisis? How do we get enough people to want to address the crisis? Instead, Outer Wilds says, what if we've passed the brink already? What if the way of life as we know it is coming to an end, and whatever comes next means reconfiguring and re-understanding what life even looks like day to day? Do we go through? How do we usher in that process? And should we do it joyfully? Should we do it solemnly? And I think the game says both, right? There is a degree of nostalgia and sadness and oh wow, look at everything that's going away. Those fireflies go out. Those universes go out. The galaxies go out, and it's fucking wild. Yep. But at the very end of the thing, I think it's still fundamentally hopeful that you sing a new universe into existence, whether it has you in it or not. I think the point is that it should exist, and that the joy of others that can come into the world after you is worth your labor putting into building that world. So for me, I remain very hopeful about this game, and I was shocked to see that the game presented a world in which it didn't leave a place for you in it after you did the thing.
Totally.
Outside of your probe, which can get there, which I guess is a little not.
Yeah.
But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, my answer would have been both. I started terrified, ended up, kind of hopeful and taking away a similar message of that, more specifically of the idea of putting things into motion that you will never see, but that are worth doing for the betterment of future generations or things. The first time that hit me really being kind of late. I got back into Brittle Hollow after my initial run through there, and falling into the black hole and not wanting to fall into the black hole too much. I ended up doing a lot of the more deeper exploring kind of later. It was the second to last thing I did before I did my run from to the vessel. And there's definitely a moment there where one of the second generation of Nomai, after the first ones had kind of built this city, mentioning that so and so didn't live to see this project through, but I'm gonna make sure to finish it. And what they left behind is gonna help us in the long run. It's making strides towards a thing that might not ever see, but that doesn't matter because it's worth doing for the good of other people. Right.
Yeah. There's Patrick, you go ahead and answer, and I'll read weirdly an answer that basically came in from another reader that is about the same thing. But go ahead, Patrick, if you have thoughts on the hopeful. Did you leave this hopeful? Did you leave this terrified?
Well, I probably left it in the same way that one of the few profound, like, it hits me every, like, I don't have a lot of phobias or fears, but, like, I'll be in the shower and, like, think about death and just, like, paralyzed.
Yeah.
Just
And this game is
utterly.
This game is filled with phobias. If you are afraid of being stuck in a place as sand fills in and claustrophobia kills you.
Well, that
you're
okay,
afraid
yeah,
of,
okay.
If you're afraid of drowning, I know what you're saying, but like,
If you, I was like, if you were to like rank deaths, like shitty deaths for me, I don't call it a phobia of being in like a closeted space. Like I can be in a, you know what I mean? Like I don't consider it that far, but like one of the the worst movies of all time / best movies of all time is the Ryan Reynolds movie Buried. In which he is stuck underneath the sand in, I think, the Iraq desert, like in a coffin with a cell phone for a week. And if I think about that for too long, like I have like real problems. But like that concept of death is like very troubling to me. I don't believe in an afterlife and like yada yada yada. And so like when I get stuck in that like loop of thinking about that, it really like kills me. Even though intellectually I'm like, oh, that makes sense. And like I didn't know what it was like to be before alive. And so it'll be a similar feeling in that it's an absence of feeling. Like I can intellectually talk about it because I have to do that to get myself out of like the death loop that I've gotten my brain into when I think about it, in terms of like friends, family, existence, yada, yada, yada. And so, yeah, this game gets you to think about that in a way that I had a similar split in which personally, how do I feel? Well, fuck this. Like, I'd really, science is pretty advanced. Maybe we could have found another way to figure this out, Why do I got to be the one that hits the reset button? Even if intellectually or philosophically, I understood the cycle to be potentially a healthy one. Yeah. I do think it's interesting the way the game, so many of our sci-fi narratives, especially in video games, or if you think like, the last like major sci-fi story, if you just ask me on the top of the head in video games, I think of like Mass Effect, right? And like so many sci-fi stories are about like the often cyclical, but it is about like unearthing of like ancient civilizations, how far they got, what can you learn, what can you extract from their advances and take it into yours. And this game does both. It actually tells both stories. Like it has the ancient civilization that teaches the current one something, and then also eradicates all of it and has it start from scratch, which is just fascinating because usually sci-fi stories pick a lane, and this one actually manages to do both.
Totally. I think like the fact that I think part of it for me is like it's so easy to try to make that comparison early on in your play session. You're like, oh yeah, I know about ancient aliens. I played video games before. Right. I know where this is going. Maybe there's some other dark secret. And the fact that they don't go that way, and in some ways that it's such an inverse of something like Mass Effect or so many other games that do Halo does the same thing, where it's like little bits and pieces you learn about this ancient alien, civilization. You maybe once every 7 hours you get a little bit of, a flash of some information. There's like a little bit of text that you get that fills in the gaps of the big picture. Whereas this is basically like, I'm reading AIM messages between two people flirting. Yeah. Like this is basically, I'm getting all the way through the most mundane details and the most grand ideas about what this culture was. And that degree of intimacy is so distinct. And I think it's so useful in communicating what was already lost and kind of structurally communicating to you, hey, the Nomai are gone. The Harthians are here now. The Harthians are great. I love the Harthians. Yeah. I miss the Nomai. Getting to meet a Nomai is like a high point of the game for me. Like that moment of conversation is incredible, but also it doesn't fundamentally walk anything back in the sense that the Nomai don't like return after that. Right. And so I think that sets the stage for the big final moment of like, sometimes people die. Sometimes the world does move past you. And then the hope is that joy can still exist for others in the world, and that the world itself can continue to exist on its own merits, separate from whatever demands the past has put on it. You know, we had someone write in who says, let me see here. Nelson wrote in, and I'm not going to read the whole thing because Nelson's kind of setting up a very similar question and setting some stuff up, but does say, I'm an ecologist, and so I basically never get to not think about how climate change has caused and will cause massive disruption and destruction in every ecosystem on Earth. One of my friends talks about everyone in or adjacent to ecology as collectively having climate brain. So my second favorite thing about Outer Wilds is that it's also about being born into a world that's dying and making what time you have mean something to you, because it sure as fuck won't avert catastrophe. But you can still try to make the future better. It ends with characters sitting around a campfire and shaping the birth of a universe through the collaborative musical expression of all the feelings of wonder, fear, excitement, and melancholy that they experienced. There's the knowledge that everyone and everything you ever loved is gone as the result of the inevitable death of the universe. The next universe is beautiful, but the characters will never experience it. It's not a perfect metaphor for climate change, but it's helped me process some of my feelings about what it feels like living through the end of everything. I don't know that that's the takeaway anyone else had, though. That's exactly how I came out of this feeling, Nelson. So, and again, with that drive of like, and we have to figure out what that next thing looks like. I mean, I went to Catholic school a lot. As a kid, I went to Catholic school from like kindergarten through senior year of
CCD. Did you have that?
No, because I went to Catholic school, so it was just built into school.
Right.
I had religion classes, and so one of the stories that always stuck with me is that Moses doesn't get to see the or gets to see the promised land, but doesn't get to go. There's like a classic part of the Moses story is Moses has this whole arc. If you've seen the Ten Commandments, or if you know the Superman story, he's like, oh, Moses came to this place from somewhere else.
Prince of Egypt.
If you've seen Prince of Egypt, right? Classic documentary, Prince of Egypt. That like, you probably know the bits of that story that are like, hey, here's this Jewish child who's raised as an Egyptian and then ends up leading his people against the Pharaoh and blah, 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 blah. But eventually the way that the story ends is that because of breaking a law, basically, because of defying God basically says, guess what, motherfucker? You're going to wander for 40 years through the desert. You're going to see the promised land, but you're never going to get to walk on it yourself. You can lead your people there, but you can't go there yourself. Yeah. And so, which is just brutal. Yeah. Which is just woof. That story has definitely been one of those things that stuck with me, as like clearly has inscribed itself on my own storytelling desires and aspirations. And this is a game that has a bit of that vibe, which is like, you're going to fucking see what comes next, but that's not for you. And it's such a rare thing in video games. Video games want you to go to the place. Video games want you to achieve it, right?
Right.
I think about like, I've complained about games before where like you win the day, you beat the big villain, and you've spent all this time in this world, and you don't get to see the world afterwards that you've saved. But even in those games, it's clear like you fucking saved the world, god damn it. And this is just like, no, listen, sometimes you get to the promised land, but it ain't for you. But it doesn't mean you shouldn't go. You have to lead your people there anyway. Next question comes in from Luke, who says, I recently started playing Outer Wilds per Austin's recommendations, and I've been loving it. With the recent popularity along with other time-looping video games, along with other time-looping video games like Elsinore, where you play as Ophelia reliving the events of Hamlet, and given the genre of roguelikes, which could all be considered time-looping games themselves, I wanted to ask, what direction do you want this style of game to take next? Thanks for all you do, Luke. I'm curious. Like, I feel a little bit like if you do it too often, people will get bored of the time loop pretty quickly. But
yeah,
there's that time looping multiplayer game that's happening.
What is that?
What is it called? Quantum League or something?
I don't know what this is.
It's like a FPS where you like...
The paradoxical shooter arena. Sure.
You like play out a life, and then that like recording happens again for the next round.
Oh, that's
but then you
wild.
add another. Yeah, I'm really interested to see how that actually plays out, if that plays well at all, because it seems like such a weird.
I think it's systemic stuff like that, though. I do think it's stuff like that where like you are. There was a platformer or something that did this, wasn't there recently? Where like you had to run through a thing multiple times, and each time their past run still existed, and so you could layer like solutions over your past run. This is gonna kill my brain all day. There was some sort of
90 people are going to add us on Twitter
so
later
thank you
with
for
the
that.
obvious answer that we'll,
but yeah, there's I think stuff like that is interesting. That other game is coming out soon, right? 22 minute. No, what's that game called? Something minutes, 7 minutes in heaven. It's not that.
No.
It's not that. It was at like a Microsoft event. It looked like a drama. That
I know what you're talking about. There was like a teaser.
12 minutes.
Yeah, it was just a teaser trailer. It didn't show much of the actual game.
Yeah. And also there was just the Groundhog Day game that came out on VR that I never played.
Like the movie?
Yeah, there's a Groundhog. It's
they did a sequel. Sequel.
I heard it was all right. I
heard it was actually better than.
Yeah.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
They probably just should not have called it Groundhog Day, and it probably would have actually done better. I think it was like a rare time where a license actually made people more cynical about it.
12 Minutes is also being published by Annapurna, so we know what it is.
That adds up. That means it's probably good.
Is Annapurna the A24 of video games? And I know you would think they'd be the Annapurna of video games.
Yeah, I was going to say.
But
wait, those aren't connected at all?
What, Annapurna?
And A24?
I have no idea. They could be.
I don't think so. There's Annapurna Pictures and then Annapurna video games. Those are...
My brain is... I don't know. I don't know why I made a connection.
I mean, basically what they're... I mean...
What I'm joking
but
at.
those studios...
Yeah.
Yes, you get it.
You put that logo on there.
And you go, okay.
All right. Yeah.
This one, I don't know what the future is. We'll see, right? My guess is we end up getting more games like that do it.
I want to be surprised. Who knows?
Yeah, exactly. I don't want to guess. I
didn't want Outer Wilds.
Right. This is a good question because I think that this speaks to a larger question in the way we cover games. Oscar writes in and says, the accepted wisdom around Outer Wilds was that players should avoid reading anything about the game no matter what, but was that really the best advice for the entire audience? I definitely agree it should be the initial approach, but I've seen a decent number of people, Jeff Gerstmann on the Giant Bomb Goaty podcasts, and then people in the Giant Bomb comments forums with similar experiences, who would have been more likely to stick with the game if they hadn't been so hesitant to Google things. Patrick, you've said before that if it's the difference between dropping a game or not, you will just look at a guide without any guilt. Did you take that same approach with this game? That's where I ended up with it, and I was surprised to find that unlike most games, it's pretty easy to find the exact information you need without spoiling anything else, because the community is very careful about it. So that would be my advice to anyone new to the game or who has bounced off of it in the past, but would you agree?
I agree. I think you could play this game with a walkthrough and still have a really
pretty good time.
Great time. Yeah. Inarguably the discovery part of it and the sort of like realizations were integral to my experience, but I think the story is such, the exploration parts are such, just reading the dialogue is such that if you just sat and played it with a walkthrough and just like looked at that every time you felt yourself getting frustrated, I think you could still have a very productive, interesting, there's more to this game than just that. I think this was a narrative with like the movie Parasite that I also think was overstated and they don't know anything. It's like, and in some ways I think that may have like made people think Parasite was a horror movie when it wasn't. Yeah. I mean, it's horrifying, but like not for
the reasons.
Yeah, so I think that narrative can get overstated. And I do think that's unfortunate if, there was a possibility that someone like Jeff could have gotten into it had they given their sell. But that's also like a philosophical thing. Like I know certain types of games I need to tell myself I'm good looking something up, and I need to be okay with that, because yes, I'd rather get to the end of it and there were I think one or two times in Outer Wilds, I did looked up a solution, and more often than not, when I do this with games, I go, I didn't even consider that as a possibility, so I don't even consider it a spoiler to have looked it up, because if it wasn't in my possibility space, then how can I get mad at myself for not having come up with it? And sure, you can make the argument, walk away, come back.
But the game does that already so many times. You get that feeling so many other places. I don't mind. So the one for me that I sent up, this is before the game came out, I had to send them an email, was the Ash Twin thing. Yeah. Like, this isn't, it's like, I think this is what I need to do. Am I missing something? And they're like, no, that's right. Is that not working? What's going on? Oh, we've heard, actually what they said was, we've heard that this has been a problem. Try it again, really time your jump. Make sure you go in when it's right overhead. And like, I ended up still really loving this game, obviously, and recommending it because I knew the second that this game was released, that would be everywhere on the internet, and that people should be able to talk about this game. Like, imagine I'm there with you on the couch. I'm not going to not say anything because I see the solution to a puzzle that you haven't seen yet. If I'm playing it along with you for the first time, I'm like, yo, try this thing. And that's always been part of games. That sort of collective puzzle solving nature is part of it. And ideally there would be, again, a hint system that could off on the internet somewhere you could go look it up, or even in the game directly. That would be ideal. But as it stands, like, don't beat yourself up because you have to look up a solution. And also, I have to say, like, it was very funny for me to write this, the review of this when it came out, and have a few people say, "Why'd you fucking write that this was about the end of the world?" Like, motherfucker, the sun explodes 22 minutes into you're an hour into the first session.
Yeah.
It's the end of the world. That's what the game is about. And also, I more broadly, let people talk about things. I think it is fair to be spoiler conscious and not to necessarily, as a writer, immediately on day one start having those like huge conversations.
I know, but I feel that's so much. I know, personally,
yeah.
I realize this. I feel that's way more on the people than it is on. Like, I'd rather live in a world where critics could be a little more expressive. And if you really are that spoiler conscious, just don't read. And you know what I mean? Right. Like there's a,
I'm still
a
bummed
line
I didn't write about what happens in the final chapter of Kentucky Route Zero. Like, honestly, like, part of me is like, that was the thing I'm going to write about this game. And I didn't write about the fifth act. Huh. And
I read a review where they took a different tact and said, that's all we're going to write about. Like, that was their angle in. Right. I was like, that makes sense. Like, that's sure. I could see that. That's totally justified.
But I do think that people should go into things informed most of the time. I think it's so rare that someone should go in, and I'm certainly guilty as a critic of saying you should go in without knowing anything in the past about certain things.
Yeah.
Or I'll say I went in, I'm glad I didn't know anything. But I do think that, like, knowing what you're getting into is a useful thing. Yeah. It's why I like to write reviews. It's why I like to write about games and talk about games before people play them, is so that I can give them some sort of a sense of what they're getting into and what they should be paying attention to. And I think with this game specifically, it's such a different thing for so many people that have not necessarily. I was thinking about this last night. I was thinking, like, this is a game that has lots of little subtle pushes in different directions. Like, obviously there are puzzles they want you to do first. There are, and the way that they do that is the same way that we've talked about, like, Breath of the Wild. Despite seeming super open, some shrines are really easy to find. Some shrines are much harder to find. Yeah. Some things are always in eyesight. Some things are not. This is a game where, yes, you could theoretically beat it instantly. You could beat it on your first run. Like, you could go get the warp core. I guess you would need the coordinates first. But maybe you go get the coordinates, rush to get the warp core, then run to where the ship is. You couldn't do this, obviously.
No, yeah.
But you know what I'm saying. Like, but there is actually a design for the order in which you would mostly find information. Right. You mostly would go down a certain path on each world, see certain stuff more often than not. They've designed it so that, like, anywhere where there's a lot of detail is where you look first. Generally, that's where the eye naturally goes, and that detail reveals certain things. The timing and the scripting allows you to do certain things in certain orders, and blah blah blah. And I think that, like, given all of that stuff, like, you should be able to talk about. You should go in knowing generally what all that is building towards, or is what you should be looking to pay attention to. And the game is already doing some of that work for you. So I definitely feel like this is a situation where don't be put off by the fear that somehow you're going to miss something, if that makes sense. If you go in without, or if you go in. If you don't go in blind, quote unquote,
right.
Let yourself have that safety valve. Kaya wants to know what our experiences were during the final run. Writing, Outer Wilds was my favorite video game, and probably my overall favorite game. Playing it was a blessing and probably the thing that's given me the strength to get through this year. So I'm eternally grateful to Austin for convincing me not to sleep on it. I'm glad you didn't sleep on it. Nothing could have prepared me for how I felt drifting through the egg chamber on the final run, knowing the loop was broken and I had only one shot. Of course, Outer Wilds pulls that punch if you actually die. But what were your experiences with that final run and with other games that changed the stakes for dying or failure? Celeste's Golden Strawberries come to mind, as well as things like permadeath runs or the Nuzlocke run in Pokemon. Thank you all so much. I also think we should just talk about the ending of this game a little bit. Yeah. We already kind of all said that musical cue is so good and that rush across space. But what did y'all think of the eye, getting to the eye for the first time?
You know, it was strange because so much of the game, despite it being, you know, a sci-fi adventure, felt like fairly grounded. Everything felt very, or at least normal within the bounds of the rules that it had set up.
Yeah.
And then once you go to the eye, everything is like, well, just throw it. You know, once the quantum moon is introduced, once you go to the eye, everything, all that is kind of thrown out the window, and it becomes a more surrealist adventure than it has before then. And like when you have that moment where like, well, I guess I'm gonna jump off this ledge and just go into this warp tunnel. I don't know, like all bets were off at that point. It was also the moment where I had kind of stopped thinking about what is this game about, because it was like terribly unclear. Like the game story could have gone in a million different directions. It was very open-ended at that point. Yeah. Yeah, the possible, like the scope of resolutions, like the eye could have talked to me and been God, and I also would have accepted that as a reasonable answer for like where we could have gone.
And it might have done that
from here, given
right. Like we don't
like I mean the phrasing of the game, like the there's so much ambiguity about the eye in that it's a message, right? Like it is purposely. You argue, or maybe not purposely, but arguably drawing people to it on purpose, which is that just part of a natural cycle that is played out over countless millennia, in which when the cycle is over, it draws people to it. And once the eye is observed, the cycle begins all over again. Does that make the eye an omnipotent being that has like thoughts, feelings, does that like it does, you know, I don't, who knows? Like the game doesn't really touch on that other than it acts as a big reset button.
Totally. I for me, like the wonder that hit is even before you jump in the pit, just landing there, looking out from like the bridge of the Nomai vessel and seeing this just like black landscape crackling with energy. And then that approach, the approach to where the like eye itself is, and the lightning is going off all around you, and as it hits, it's creating visibility, which brings trees and rocks into place and moves them around because it's quantum. It's like all quantumly entangled or whatever. It floored me the first time through. And again, you have to remember, I'm playing this game before anyone else has played. Like, I don't have anyone to talk about what's happening, and I'm in tears. Like, I'm just headphones on. My room is dark. The lightning is striking. I'm scared. Like religious experience. Like, you know, I talked about the Moses story before, but you don't get that in games that often. You don't get that sort of like transcendent moment of I've gone from a world that's predictable, that is secure, even if it's dangerous, stable, even if it's falling apart. It falls apart the same every time, right? Maybe the moon is a different place, but the Brittle Hollow falls apart the same way every time.
Right.
Things are fundamentally deterministic, even if in certain ways they are not. Even if the probe goes a different direction, the comet keeps the same arc. At the macro level, things have been deterministic. And suddenly you're in this space that is pure chaos. You're in this place that is dark and unknowable. You have this feeling that, like, if you blink for a second, maybe you're going to get caught by one of those lightning bolts. Maybe you'll maybe you'll die. Maybe you'll just die, and that'll be it.
I ran into a quantum thing.
Yeah, you like walked into like a rock or something.
It like bumped me from the side.
Yeah.
I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
I turned, it was there, and then turned away.
And
it's gone.
Right. It completely, like, tears from being overwhelmed is not a thing that I've ever had in a game before, in that like deep sensory, like body, not like I almost said body horror, but I mean like the horror of being embodied in a space that felt scary. And you get there and it's just this gaping hole and you're like, what am I even looking at? What do I do?
Also that trick. When you approach it, it's in the sky.
Yes.
And then there's like a pit that you like walk into.
And then around and up.
Yeah. God.
Absolutely. And then you jump in upwards into the sky into the hole in the ground. Like it's both,
Right.
you know?
Yeah.
And then then you fall through, and then at that point it's a poem, right? It's like it is installation art. Like it is the fireflies are actually galaxies, and then you're in the trees and like all of that stuff. And then I guess wait, do you show up first? You show up in the museum, right?
Is it the first? No.
I think the museum is first. You fall through the eye and you're in the museum, and then you leave the museum and fall into the forest. Because everything ends at the forest.
Yes.
You're in the museum, and at first I thought that was the end. I thought straight up jumping into the eye was the end of the game, and they were pulling like what happens in Blendo games and Brendan Chung's games, where like if you beat 30 Flights of Loving, the last very small spoiler for 30 Flights of Loving, but it basically kicks you to like a museum about the game 30 Flights of Loving, an in-game little micro museum. I thought that's what it was. I was like, oh wow, look, we're back in the museum, and then like you get to the very end of that, you walk through everything, you read everything, you see one of my favorite moments there is seeing the note from whoever the astronomer is.
Right.
That's like, oh wow, look, it looks like everything is speeding up. Like, why are there all these different galaxies going nova? Weird. And then you take that step outside and it does that zoom out and you kind of see you see nothing and everything, and then you fall into that forest. And it's just, I was like very overwhelmed to the fact that back in November, maybe it must have been, because it was before the game of the year. It was before the Giant Bomb game of the year, because Brad was messaging me about like getting close to the end, and I was like, you have to push through, Brad. This game is your game. Like I promise you're going to love the end of this game. This is the most like space, like 2001, like that style of big idea sci-fi that I know you love. Please push through. And while trying to give him a tip on something, I went back and watched my footage of the end of the game. I recorded the last hour of my gameplay, and just watching it like put me in my fucking feelings. So that complete, from the moment you pull the warp core through when you get to the very end, I was just like stunned. Games don't end like this. They don't do, especially games that have been so systemic, don't end with something so narrative and scripted and like, you know.
So we were going to record this a week and a half ago. I hadn't finished the game, and I drank a latte too late in the day for me, which is anytime after 5. Ended up playing until like 3 a.m. and failing 2 final runs.
Oh.
First one, I was going too fast, and I hit Brittle Hollow at a velocity that instantly killed me.
No.
The second one, I got eaten.
By a fish.
Yeah. I was like, I've got to be out of this. I've got to be out of this fish's range. And like, I hit the booster just a little bit because oh wait, actually, sorry, 3 times. 3 times. One, I ate by a fish. Second time, crashed. The third time, I made it to the ship, put the warp core in.
Yeah.
Wrote in the coordinate, and as I was inputting the file, there's like 3 symbols you have to draw in. As I was inputting the last symbol, the fucking Nova went off.
Ugh.
That sucks.
And at that point, it was 3 a.m. So I was like, well, we're recording this tomorrow today.
In 6 hours or whatever.
I guess I'll watch the end.
Fuck.
I watched it.
Yeah.
And, I was like, even just watching it in like this kind of weird stupor of like, it's way too fucking late for me. What is happening? Like, it still deeply affected me. But what surprised me was I went back this past weekend and actually did it in my game. And I don't know what, this is the thing with games. This is the thing that any interactive thing, when it's doing it right, should do, is that it was different. It was different doing it and going through all the motions and like actually, even though I knew what was happening, like it was still deeply moving to just like see all these pieces. It's because you're doing the physical motion of being the one to like interact with these things, even because like even though they're not really puzzles, there's in the final like vignette, there are kind of these little moments where you have to do a few, figure out a few like light puzzles in order to move forward.
Yeah.
And something about even knowing what what I was going through, like I still was just like hit so hard of like the kind of enormity of, you know,
This
existence, right?
Everything.
And you know, I did not expect. I was like, oh, I already know. I'm just gonna do it to kind of like, you know, finish this save file basically. But it's still like it is really, really beautiful the way that they, you know, I mean, it brings all the like musical elements together. The fact that apparently if you miss the quantum moon, Solanum, right?
Yeah, she isn't there.
She isn't there.
Yeah,
which
she's just straight up not there.
That's
because why would she be?
Right. No, but like also,
or I guess the question there that ends up doing in terms of like capital L lore stuff is like, are they there at all? Are they projections from your mind as you fall into the fucking center of the universe and die? Is God at the center of the universe, or a God at the center of the universe who is pulling things from your mind? That was
definitely the thing for me, was like, these weren't those people.
Right. Yes.
This was the idea of community being the thing that makes, you know, the thing, the most important.
Sees nothing.
Yeah.
And nothing says what comes to mind.
Right.
And your character says the people around me.
Right.
It says community.
Exactly.
If there's one thing I've learned from reading all of this shit, it's other people are important.
Yeah.
And I'm one of them, and we're together, and we can. That's it. If I have to fill in the nothing with something, it's other people.
Other people.
And I will do a bunch of little funny, goofy, kind of scary puzzles. To bring them with me at the very end in the weird forest.
Totally.
I do wish the one moment that didn't land with me about that message in the ending was that these are just like random people you met. Like there's not like an indication these are like real close friends of yours. Like the game doesn't spend a lot of time establishing that up front. Like, you know, it's not meant to be a game where you spend an extraordinary amount of time with NPCs. And so there's like a universal sense of community, but I don't know that the game spent like an extraordinary amount of time laying the groundwork for like why community is important. I mean, I guess like,
that's the whole, Know My Story is that, right? Like all of their stuff is dialogue, right? You're never finding a person writes a thing to themselves. They're always talking to other people. So I think the universal thing is there. I think the other half of it is I did take a lot of joy in going back to each of the Outer Wilds members and updating them. Like a lot of them you can go to and be like, I found this thing. And they're like, oh, wow, cool. Okay. And you're right. There's not a lot there. There's not depth there. I think the deepest thing is the Quantum Moon conversation because it's actually a conversation. Right. Well, it's in some ways the least like a conversation, but in other ways it's such a...
But it feels like it's like a cultural exchange that feels so profound. And whereas it mostly just feels like, you know, sort of like perfunctory NPC conversations you're having with some lore dumps around the galaxy.
Yeah.
I definitely, that's part of why I saw them as more as stand-ins for the concept of, you know, other people
generally.
And like I spent so much time in that first run before the time loop actually starts that I did still have the connection to the Hearthians as like a people that for 3/4 of me playing this game, I was thinking I was going to save, right? So, making this new universe from that that impulse of wanting those connections to stay, right? Having those people live so that they can continue their lives together. But then taking that impulse and being like, okay, well, that is kind of the energy we want to put into the next universe.
Yeah.
Was kind of really, you know,
definitely
super beautiful.
Yeah. On that note of translation, really quick, I just want to read one quick one. Daniel wrote in to say, early in my playthrough of Outer Wilds, I pulled up my translator and found a pun written in an alien language was perfectly translatable to the language I could read. This slightly bothered me due to the nature of translating puns between languages. I was not expecting to read any puns. Did anyone else notice this? I have two answers. One is translators translate puns all the time. You just find something that's appropriate,
right?
That like communicates the nature of the pun.
You localize it.
Like localization. We've said this a bunch is different than raw translation, but also raw translation just doesn't exist.
Would a tool do localization? A tool would just do raw.
Maybe
translation,
it's very. So I have two answers. One is maybe it's a very good tool, Two is this
It's doing localization.
Yeah, two is sometimes this does just happen. I have a particular example. The word matsu in Japanese means pine, like a pine tree.
Right.
It is also the same way you pronounce the word. It's written differently, but you pronounce both words the same way. It's for when you miss someone, for when you're pining, when you pine for them.
Oh my God.
And that's just us. We just if you told a story about someone who like went out to cut down pine trees because they were pining for someone, that's the same pun.
Right.
And that just happens. Words are just like that sometimes.
Sometimes, humanity transcends the specific things that they set up
words
to
just
communicate.
line up like that. So, maybe it was a case like that. I'll hand wave it.
Right.
Let them have puns. Let there be puns. Maybe one or two more questions and we'll wrap it up.
Yeah.
This one comes in from RS, who says, "I hate this game. Don't get me wrong. I love the world it builds, the characters it introduces, the exploration, the music, the puzzles, the art direction, the grand narrative it hints at, or at least a taste of all that I've seen in 12 hours of attempted play. But I hate it. Flying that damned spaceship is just unbearable to me. I'm not wired for it. Yes, I'm using a controller. Yes, I've played other first-person games with full 3D range of motion without issue, like Subnautica. Yes, I know about the autopilot feature. I still can't stand it. I know the devs went more than halfway to meet me here. The game's solar system is a toy. The controls provide an arcade version of spaceflight, nothing near a sim, let alone a hardcore one. The damage done by impact or hard landing is laughably light and trivial to repair. And being able to see all those guardrails just makes it worse. Not only am I an incompetent pilot, I can't even fly a baby spacecraft for babies through baby space. I tried. I really, really tried. 12 hours is the longest time to spend on an effort to appreciate a game that half the internet is calling the best in a decade without getting any better at the basic fundamental act of moving from one place to another in it. What finally broke me was hearing a non-spoiling hint, thanks Tom Francis, that to finish the game I'd have to run a gauntlet of sorts in that miserable contraption, flitting about from planet to planet on a timer. No, just no, I can't, I'm done. Maybe it's just that I'm the worst kind of player for this game to begin with. The one who likes to get an up-close look at every potted plant, dawdling endlessly, taking 5 times longer to finish a level than everyone else. Any single-player objective where my opponent is the clock risks bringing me to tears. Maybe I'm just traumatized by my childhood memories of being absolutely terrible at the old Lunar Lander cabinet game. If the enemy is gravity and my tool is a thruster, then I am dead on loading screen. So my plan is just to listen to your spoiler cast and let that be the way I complete the game. I suspect, however, that there are some aspects that are best revealed visually. I never did figure out how to land on that quantum moon, and a podcast might not be the ideal way to experience the solution to a navigation puzzle. So, just for me, and maybe three other people like me who can't even manage the most dumbed down of all video game spacecrafts ever, could you recommend a playthrough video or two in your pod? I'm taken enough with the game to really want to know where it goes, but moving through it myself is just intolerable. My heart goes out to you, RS.
Yeah.
I have other friend, Casey Malone, friend of the site, also had serious trouble with like the control.
I agree that I tolerated the movement. I was able to wrap my head around enough that I did not get actively frustrated with it moment to moment, but I don't know that there was ever a case where I went, there would be enough time once on at least every run, something would just happen. I was like, I don't know why the fuck, man, fuck this. Like, and I mean that plays into. I mean, I've spoken openly before where like like my brain is just not wired. Like in high school, I'm really good at algebra, like terrible at geometry. Like there's spatial stuff that just doesn't work in my brain. And this game, it's like absolutely harps on that.
Yeah.
And I was able to, maybe just because of the types of games I play, I was able to like. Again, 90% of the time be fine, but then that 10% was so irritating that it wasn't hard for me to extrapolate. If that number wasn't 10% and was like 50-50, I don't know that I could have stood through the entirety of the game because that would have been so frustrating to manage.
Totally. I had a pretty good time with it, all said. But it's one of those things that's so tough because I know what that feeling is like.
Right.
There is nothing more frustrating in video games than that for me, of just having this disconnect between what I can see is the game that if only I could do XYZ, I know I would love this thing. And I just can't make it happen. It is deeply frustrating. So my heart goes out to players like that. I'll say again, Will Smith streamed almost all this game, I believe, on his channel. I think his channel is not that Will Smith, but but it's friend of the site tested formerly of Will Smith of Brad and Will's Tech Podcast.
There you go.
And that is how you can find that. His playthrough is really good. Will is just great at has the exact type of vibe of like curiosity. And I didn't watch the whole thing, but I watched kind of a bunch of it. And also he has the moment of meeting himself, and like he might have been one of the first people who figured it out, because it had not been written about at that point anywhere before him.
Wow.
Doing it live on stream and being like, well, what the fuck is going on here?
Yeah,
which is very cool.
That is cool.
I don't have any other ones to recommend, but that's just because I haven't done the legwork of looking them up. It's a big game to try to follow.
Yeah,
but please don't feel bad. At the very least, if you're listening to this, you're like, this game sounds great. Like it's my fault. I'm a baby. You're not a baby. Like people have different expectations, have different like levels of ability with controlling stuff, and this is a game that demands a very particular type of control experience. So it would be cool if they released a patch that let you go into the options and make loops longer. Or something as like an accessibility feature of just like, listen, totally, but let me do it.
Yeah,
let me break it. Like put it behind a thing that says, "Hey, heads up."
No, I mean like, given the way that
you're right,
like all the things are moving.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a way they could do it, but it would be more than just adding time, right?
Yeah, because it would extend every. Yeah, it would have to. You could have to like make it twice as long or 4 times as long. You know what I mean?
Right, and like everything goes slower.
The comet just moves slower.
You just? I wonder if you could just pause it at the end, though. Like whatever the end state is, that's where it stops.
But even things are still moving in that. I guess the biggest example is the twins.
Yeah.
Once the sand's all moved, it does stop moving. They still keep circling
What if
each
you
other.
could pause the world?
Right.
Maybe that would be the biggest accessibility option here. You're like, the sand stops falling, everything pauses, and you can unpause it.
Yeah.
And obviously this changes the game entirely, because then it actually becomes like...
They do give you the wiggle room of being able to pause during dialogue and translation and in the ship, so at least when you're reading stuff, you can take your time.
Yeah.
Definitely
have that all turned on for sure.
Turn on. I left the dialogue off.
Imagine a version of the game that does just give you time powers, where you can like rewind or fast forward different sections. Like you like go to Ash Twin and or to Ember Twin and just like zoop, like fast forward a little bit, then rewind to like lower the sand level again. That'd be very cool.
That would be cool.
Let's get maybe one more. I'll just do this one's a quick one. I'm not going to read the whole thing. Blake wants to know if there are any puzzles that we were overthinking. I will read Blake's example. For example, 2 big hurdles for me were the Quantum Moon and the Ash Twin project. For the Quantum Moon, there's an observatory on one of the planets with rotating stones that point at the Quantum Moon's position. I thought that I had to mount my camera at one pointed at the moon, then fly to it to prevent it from disappearing. Turns out you can just take a picture from your ship, basically. I also tried to set...
Same, 100%. I overthought the Quantum Moon. I was trying to think of all these weird, like, it's like, do I need it to be looking at me as I'm approaching as the descent? And then I just looked it up and I was like, oh, all right. Well, I'm glad I just looked it up, because I would have spent 2 hours doing terrible things otherwise.
A lot of these for me were like, I didn't have the full puzzle, but I thought I did.
Yeah.
Specifically with the Quantum Moon. There's some mention that you always land on the South Pole.
Yes.
And I was like,
Were you just trying to land?
Yes, you can tell. If you get close enough to the moon, you can tell what axis it's spinning on, and you can find the poles.
Does it spin on a different axis every time? Is it like spinning differently?
Yeah.
Wow, that's wild.
It always has. It's always perpendicular or parallel to the axis of whatever it's orbiting, I think.
Oh,
or something like that.
That makes sense.
It's always like kind of oriented to whatever it's.
The fucking Quantum Moon rules. That's all.
Yeah. Fucking Greg rules, okay?
Yeah, exactly.
The moon rules, okay? But like, there's definitely a point where you can see where the South Pole would be, and I spent so many times trying to just perfectly land in the center of the spinning of the Quantum Moon for way too fucking long before I was like, oh wait, I didn't do anything on Giants Deep yet. Let me go look at the whole, Quantum Tower trials.
Yeah. that was definitely the one for me of overthinking it. I think stuff like anytime that I try to force through like move my ship through a space, the quantum tower, same thing, the black hole, a lot of stuff on Brittle Hollow. It's a lot of that stuff. Did y'all go into the lava place on above Brittle Hollow?
You can go in there?
Yeah, you could totally go in there. There's writing in the place where those meteors fall.
Oh, yeah, I found that by accident.
Yeah. That was wild.
I tried to see if there's a way to land on that, but I kept dying. I was like, that's just a lava planet.
There's like a little, not a lab, but there's like a whiteboard set up in there that you can go in and read and stuff. They're like,
that's fucking amazing.
We thought there was some shit in here. No, it's just lava. This is a waste of our fucking time.
Get out.
Yeah, exactly. Last one,
oh my God.
And we've already kind of touched on this a little bit, but this will be the last one here. I'm going to skip this one. There's one that was just about like getting comfortable with impending death, but I feel like we've hit that one quite a bit. So here's the last one, which is still kind of interesting, I think, given everything. This comes in from Morgan, who says, "Hi, my name is Morgan from Utah. I started and finished Outer Wilds when Austin first started talking about it early last year, and I absolutely loved it. I personally have a tendency to gorge myself on a game, and because of that, I experienced too much too quickly and missed a lot of detail. I've been replaying it to get ready for the Spoilercast, and being able to take my time and really observe and take things in is the better way to play. My question is, how do you avoid ruining a game for yourself when you have to play it quickly as a games journalist? Have you found yourself avoiding playing games in your free time or resenting a game that you used to like because you've just done too much of it all at once? Thanks, and have a good week." I guess part of your answers are going to be you waited 10 months to play it until it wasn't.
Yeah, it wasn't.
Until a dead period.
Not on purpose, though.
No.
But generally, yeah, like I think this is that certainly wouldn't be the first critics or writers to speak to the point that reviewing a game can often be detrimental to your enjoyment, especially when you're in the back third of a game. It's usually around the time when you're like,
all right.
I felt that during like God of War. Like I know that talking to like Gita about her reviewing Fire Emblem last year. Like imagine doing a 65-hour game in 2 weeks, in which a lot of that game is repetitive combat sequences over and over. It's one thing to do that over the course of like a summer.
You have to go to the office for a lot of that and do other stuff. That's not just your job,
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it is.
Well, it's also just playing a game. Right. It's nice every once in a while to like spend all day playing a game. It's like not fun to do that all the time because you need to cram in 40 hours.
I might still be playing Monster Hunter Iceborne if I hadn't had to cram it.
Totally.
And like the repetition of grinding for those things was compressed in such a way that like I was just done. It's rough. It's hard.
Totally. I definitely think. Like I'll say in this case specifically, they gave us ample time to play through it. I underestimated how long it would be. I very much thought I was getting into a 12-hour game, and it's not a 12-hour game.
No.
I think I went longer than most, but I didn't have resources is the thing. So I went for like 30 hours is what I would say, somewhere in there.
I think it's actually closer to 15 to 20 than it is to 30. That's where I ended
If you can look stuff up, it is, for sure. My fucking ass being like, I don't know no one's talked to me about this game. I have no one I can message and be like, hey, am I on the right track? Which is what so many people who like message me questions ask me those things. Like, what do I do with, I don't want you to tell me what to do with these fish, but here's what I'm doing with these fish. Is this right? And I'd be like, no. Or like, yeah, that's right. You got it.
Did any of you try your probes with the fish?
Probably. What happens? So they don't chase it, do they?
No, they don't chase it. They chase you.
They chase you.
They chase the origin point, which is
using your probe just to trick the fish would have been good, but I bet it would have been really easily exploitable. You would just burned right through that place, right?
Yeah, but it's still very funny that they hear the launch,
right? Because it's audio. It's not. Yeah, totally. God. All right. With that, we'll bring this one to a close. Any final thoughts? Any final statements here about Outer Wilds? I'm so excited to see whatever this team does next. I cannot wait.
Yeah, that was my same thought. Was just I'm excited to be surprised by whatever they choose to point their eye towards next. Ha ha ha.
Yeah. Outer Wilds 2. No, don't do that. Do something completely surprise me just as much.
Yeah, totally.
Again, take something completely different completely different energy, a completely different direction. I would love to see it.
We all went to the Quantum Moon, right? Everyone got the best, quote unquote best end.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. With the mantis people.
Yeah, with the bug people.
With the bug people. Yeah. You don't get that if you don't go there.
Right.
They're just an empty moon, which is interesting. Yeah. Which, okay, they're, it's fine.
Yeah.
But the campfire is nice. And yeah, so thank you to why have I blanked on the name of the studio? Why is this happening to me?
I don't know.
Mobius Digital. Mobius Digital. Shout out to Mobius Digital for making one of my favorite games of the decade for sure. It's going to be one of those games that like completely not only sticks with me for a long time, but it makes me think. This is the thought that I had before. I just remembered the thought that I lost while we were talking about whether or not you should go outside of the game for hints and stuff, or whether or not you should go in. This is the back half of that thought. Like Outer Wilds, I've arrived at it non-linearly. The thing that I was thinking last night, which is how I started that statement before, if we can loop back 42 minutes or whatever, was in 10 years, I'm so curious to see if this game seems unsubtle compared to what could come next. This game's storytelling, what I was saying before was like, there are still hints that guide you through the game through visual clues and like visual, like, you get from point A to point, like, you can always see this thing. And so your attention's going to go there and then you're going to go there yourself. I'm curious right now, today, this game feels so restrained and so subtle in its ability to tell a story without you killing anything, without you being the hero, without a lot of those styles of things that are so familiar from the rest of games.
Yeah.
And I'm so curious that in 10 years, will it seem unsubtle the way, or in 20 years or 30 years, the way that like going back to a film from the mid-century can sometimes feel like everyone's overacting, everyone is shouting, everyone is like in this other mode of expressivity that's dialed all the way up to 11. I'm curious to see like how will we feel about this game if more games that have been inspired by it continue to come out, not just inspired by the systemic stuff, but also by its kind of ethos, its vision of what other types of interaction can be interesting in games.
Yeah.
I'm so fascinated to see not only what Mobius Digital does next, but like it's one of those games that gives me hope for the future of games because it felt like a genuinely new experience for me in a way that I couldn't just say, oh yeah, it's basically Myst or it's basically Zelda or whatever. So yeah. Patrick, you will specifically want to know this. Part of that documentary, the Danny's documentary, one of the original inspirations for this game was Zelda Skyward Sword being so disappointing for the lead designer, who was like, where is the Zelda that's like, I explore open, I don't want to get talked at all the time. I want to just explore the world and like be out there in the world and doing things. It's a very funny moment.
Skyward Sword is a 40-hour game that would have been a really good 25-hour game. It had that last Triforce dungeon is really good.
One day they will figure out how to remake that game for people.
No, please don't. I don't need to swag. Like the wagging was fine the first time.
You don't want to wag? You're done with wagging?
Nah.
Is it? It's like such a. It is really that intrinsic of a part of that game.
Oh,
you really gotta wag. I never.
No, you could. No, you could. You could.
There are enemies where you have to do a diagonal slash.
Yeah, put that
in
on
a specific direction.
Put that on X. Put diagonal.
Yeah, but my guess is you can play that game on PC on an Xbox controller, and they've figured out a way to let you do that.
Probably. Yeah. All right, that's gonna do it for us with that last shot at Skyward Sword.
Wow.
I hope everyone
make that the headline for the pod post.
Exactly.
Hey, fuck Skyward Sword. Actually,
just a picture of Outer Wilds. Like what are these two?
What are these two saying? I don't understand. Thank you to everyone who sent in questions. If we didn't get to your question, I'm sorry. We got so many. I tried to hit at least all the topics that came in. Generally speaking, I hope everyone has a good week. We'll be back later this week with some more Waypoint Radio. You can follow us on Twitter, twitter.com/Waypoint. Follow me, Austin_Walker, Kato.
At A_Kato_appears.
And Patrick.
At Patrick Lubbock.
Should we go out on the out? Can we do this without getting sued? Can we just play a little bit of that Outer Wilds music? That little like the little. I want that. Yeah.
We should have all just figured out what our.
That was one of the. Someone did write that question. It was like, what would your instruments be, and can you play us out a little jam?
Oh, I want to learn that on the flute.
You do. I don't know you know how to play the flute.
Yeah.
Damn.
I found my old flute. I played the flute in middle school. I found my old flute at home when I went over to the. There's some tweets. If you look for the word flute in my tweets, I tweeted a video of me doing fucking Megalovania.
Oh my god! Shut the fuck up.
It's just the first line.
Incredible.
I'm not good at the flute.
You like learn how to. This is
simple enough. I could do that.
I would play an upright bass in this world. I think I'd like be hauling around this big, like up, which is actually a little bit of KRZ energy of just like I guess I'm fucking hauling this huge fucking bass around with me everywhere. But yeah, that would be mine. Like a doom 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 doom. Like that would be where I'm at. Kato, so you flute, I'm upright bass. What are you playing in this band, Patrick?
I want a harmonica.
You get the harmonica.
I don't know how to play a harmonica. I don't know what you know.
You know what? I bet it seems hard. It's because I've used a harmonica before.
It seems really tough.
It seems real tough. It does. Just play us out. There you go.
There we go.
This fucking song puts me in my feelings. It's so much. Thank you all for joining us. Shoutouts to Bowen. Or I guess Bowen's not playing us out. Shoutouts to Outer Wilds again one more time. I hope everyone has a great week. We'll be back later this week with more Waypoint Radio. Peace. Fuck capitalism, go home.
Didn't really get into the economics of that world. Not really sure how commerce happens.
No,
out there.
I think maybe it's a world freed of commerce.
Seemed like a barter system, maybe.
At most, right? I think everyone just was working towards the common good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
interesting.
Weird.
There weren't enough. There really wasn't enough people to have to where you could even see the justification for
into how is their advanced rocket ship flight and also 12 people that exist.
Oh, it's because they had a jump start.
Because of the Nomai.
You're
right. They had
the crystal.
The crystals in the ship.
Into the ship.
That's true. There is just we got
the rest
crystal.
of it's made out of fucking wood.
It's so good. I fucking love it so much. All right, we're done. Bye.
Bye.
All right. God.
I realized way too late that part of the reason why I thought the Nomai just died off is that they find early Hearthians.
Oh, right.
And they're like fish.
They're fish,
with 4 eyes.
Yeah,
It's just this was eons ago.
It was forever ago.
Forever.
I'm gonna actually run to the bathroom.
Sounds good.
So I will be right back.
Okay.
For real.
I'm gonna grab some water then. Or coffee. Coffee's like water. Coffee's like water.
Good timing.
Coffee. It's like water.
But good. I like water.
Water's good. Water's good. Damn.
Water's good.
Coming after water.
I'm not coming after water. Water's coming after me.
Austin Walker says,
Yeah, no water, please.
water. I barely know her.
Boo. Boo. All right.
Make a mental note to talk about the sweat controller next time.
The what?
The DualShock 5. It's gonna drink your sweat.
The biometric stuff. Yeah. You know.
what?
Oh man.
It's gonna drink your sweat.
You know what? This is
thought you
where
said
this is like the equivalent of what they call political silly season, where it's like there's no information.
Yeah. Yep.
So people are just looking at fucking patents and being like, "Yep, PS5 DualShock is gonna eat your skin molecules and turn it into a Chivos." Oh, my mic is really loud.
Yeah, it is.
Hold on. What is going on there? Let me see what Windows did. Windows, what did you do?
Fucking Windows.
Yeah, it doubled it. Oh, I know why. It's because I did an interview. I interviewed that another Metroid 2 remake guy that got hired by the Ori developer about a year after that got shit canned by Nintendo.
Nice.
And yeah, it was really fun interview. But when Microsoft makes you use their Windows Team bullshit to do interviews, and it's just like just a proprietary shitty Skype client, but it is notoriously bad at hijacking your microphone more than other devices. Anyway, I'm at timed out as.
I'll also get there. 33. Okay.
Claps.
Ray Barnholt on Twitter response. So the Cyberpunk tweet was, gamers should never be forced to purchase the same game twice or pay for upgrades. Owners of Cyberpunk 2077 for Xbox One will receive the Xbox Series X upgrade for free when available. Ray Barnholt with the quote tweet says, "When have gamers been forced to do anything?"
Also, gamers love to rebuy games.
Yeah, absolutely, including ones by that company. The Witcher 3 has
The Witcher 3 is going to become the new
Nintendo.
Skyrim.
let me rebuy Super Mario 3D World. Super Mario Sunshine. I would buy. Let's go.
Put Final Fantasy Tactics on Switch. I need to buy it again.
That said, those are games that have not there's. There's games that I will never buy Mario Brothers 1 again. Sorry, I've invested. I'm too deep.
The line the moment has passed.
Yeah, I bought it for Game Boy Advance, and then I was like, cool. I'm good. Whereas some games I'm willing to.
So you bought it as an adult. That's the thing. You didn't buy it the first time. A parent or an uncle, you know what I mean? Someone gave you Mario Brothers, and you're like, you know what? I remember when those games came out. There was definitely a vibe where it was like, I'm going to buy this. I'm going to buy Super Mario 2 Advance because I like Super Mario Brothers 2 more than most people, more than it maybe even deserves. I'm going to buy that on GBA, and I'm going to do it while I'm working here at GameStop, or I was at EB, but still, it was like I'm going to turn that EB money back around, give it to EB for these Nintendo classics now available on the Game Boy Advance. But yeah, you're right. The crossplay stuff. I think we're going to see.
Yeah,
more
there's a little bit of Xbox stuff that was announced today.
Yeah.
Part of the drip that we're getting, I guess, instead of whenever those big events eventually happen. But yeah,
are those happening? Do we think those are going to happen?
I don't know. Yeah, well, look, be careful what you say into a microphone because people will take that and turn it into a message board thread. Yeah, I don't know. Plus, who knows? This coronavirus stuff, I think, has a legitimate chance to. I was
gonna say you're about to be quoted.
This is not informed speculation, but it is clear that the Japan. Can we just have that as a drop? That Kato just puts on occasional things. But he can't. He can't tell us. It needs to be a post, an edit. It's a post thing.
Yeah.
So that he makes it seem like, hey, all right, Kato, out here, just juice this one up.
Yeah.
World premiere
in post. But Japan culturally seems to be, kind of pulling out a lot of video game events. And so, I don't know. Like it's one thing I will say is I think Daniel Ahmed, the Hong Kong games analyst, pointed out that it's been so long that people have forgotten like how late in the game sometimes this stuff happens.
Yeah.
Like the Xbox One was 6 months from reveal to launch, and the PS4 was just a little earlier than what we're used to. And I think because the cycles have gotten so long, it feels people are just anxious.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, anyway, they announced that, or Microsoft announced that Cyberpunk 2077 is going to be cross by gen. So if you buy for Xbox One, you will automatically get the upgraded Xbox Series X version. And my theory I was positing before we started recording was that I think that is going to be like a Game Pass type thing where companies are paying like for like they're giving away money, right? Like, I mean, yes, do I think these games should just work? Like, but like historically, that's not how it's happened, especially if you're not just sharing it. Like, this isn't backwards compatible. This is you're getting a better version of the game.
Yeah.
And I wonder if, like, would I be shocked if this is untrue for the PS5 version? Like, no, I like, or that if that became
or
a
if it's
trend
not
where
true for other games is the other thing, right? Like this is,
or
not
you have to
necessarily-
pay for it.
Right.
Like, hey, Microsoft actually, in the same way that they do DLC exclusives, like, look, like we've actually partnered with CD Projekt Red. You buy this on Xbox One, you're getting the upgraded version for free. Like, don't worry about it. And then over here, they're charging you like a $15 upgrade fee to get the 4K version on the other platform. That wouldn't shock me if that became, and that fits in line with all of Microsoft's like service ideas of like, look, the box is irrelevant. Like, we're going to give you a good box,
Right.
but you want the cheaper box. Like, that's fine. Don't worry about it.
I will say this stuff. What I have heard.
Ooh, exclusive.
World
What I have heard is that if you're a developer,
the industry listens.
if you are a developer who wants to turn on, if you do make a Series X version and a Xbox One version, and you are saying, I'll flip that switch is there for you to flip. Like, that is built in.
It's built in on like an API level that like,
Yes.
hey, we're thinking
Yes.
about games that are
Now,
working across
exactly.
platforms
And
as opposed to just, yeah.
And but it's not I've also heard that's not necessarily a requirement. Like, if you as a developer like, no, I need to charge twice, you could make that decision. But what I don't know is if there's guidance there in terms of should you do it or not do it. Do you know what I mean? My guess is that Microsoft would like you to do that if you can do it.
And hey, we'll do
right.
some marketing for your game in exchange, which is historically that has been one of the ways that these deals happen with DLC or whatever. I know there's like a controversial one with the last Call of Duty, right? Like was it like Spec Ops or whatever was exclusive to the PS4 version?
Yeah, but I think
for
that
a year. But anyway, like,
yeah,
it's often not. Sometimes it's a case that a check is written for this stuff, but it is often the case that it's like, it happens in other ways where like that money gets accounted for through like cross promotional deals where Microsoft or Sony will say, hey, we're going to front a bunch of advertising money in exchange for you putting this first on our
Here's
platform.
my bet. If I had to make a dollars like to donuts bet.
I think we should do this. I actually think we should do this, by the way, as you're saying, we should do a bet. I think we should do before these events, maybe when the first one is announced, and then that'll be our cue.
Yes, that's our cue.
I think we should all do bingo cards. We'll come up. We'll all submit. The users can do it. We will do it. We'll make a doc with bingo, and then we'll sit and we'll do a round robin, and we'll make our bingo cards on a podcast.
Love it. Here's one that I'm going to put there is I think you see Microsoft come out and say that all of your Xbox One games you'll be able to play on the Series X. That'll be a huge talking point of like your library is coming with you. You're not going to leave behind. You've already been playing blah, blah, blah. You've been playing Rocket League on your Xbox One for 5 years. Well, guess what? You can keep playing it on your Xbox Series X. And then
it's going to be better than ever before.
And then they're going to say, at launch
for select titles,
select titles are not only going to be playable.
It'll be one of those where like a bunch of logos goes up, and, and everyone's like on Twitter is like trying to screen cap it and explain all the games.
Right, and then it'll be
Thanks,
including 3 games and Cyberpunk 2077, the best way you can play it, or the way it's meant to be played, like that style of whatever branding. Which God, but at that point, will that game be out by then? When is that game out? When will we know how frustrating / exciting / disappointing / whatever that game is?
Didn't they say September?
Is that right?
I want to say
because it did get pushed. It was going to be this spring, and it got pushed, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, September.
Okay.
Look, hey, the way to play Cyberpunk 2077 is to buy it on Steam and then pay for GeForce Now, because that's the thing they announced last week, in which that at launch you'll be able to play Cyberpunk through GeForce Now, and by all accounts that's a pretty good service. Other than the fact that companies keep pulling their games from that
companies
service.
keep going. Wait, what? Excuse you?
Doing what now?
You what? You can play.
Wait, you're making money on this thing?
What's an
But I guess
loophole?
they made an actual deal with CD Projekt Red, so
that makes sense.
Yeah, I don't understand how they can. What are they threatening there?
Legal action.
But
I don't know that we know. We don't. It is unclear what it.
A legal fight would be
the speculation
expensive.
I have read is that NVIDIA is probably in the right in that all they are doing is providing a way to play a game that launches your existing license, and that they're not actually doing anything. They wouldn't have gotten to the point of launching a paid service if they thought they were committing an illegal act and were just waiting to get sued over it. Like, that doesn't seem like the way a company like NVIDIA would work. But that certain companies with some of the broadest IP may want sweetheart deals from NVIDIA. And so, like, for example, with Bethesda on Friday night, all of their games, except for Wolfenstein Youngblood, which had the RTX or like the ray tracing stuff turned on so that you could do that through streaming. So that sounds like, well, Youngblood, they had an existing partnership with NVIDIA because they wanted to turn the ray tracing on. But the other games, they didn't. And so we need to, hey, NVIDIA, if anything, it probably suggests it's a popular service that people like, and that that's when companies are going to come to the table and say, hey, get us paid. It's a story I'm meaning to look into this week. If you know anything about
interesting.
it, my signal number is 224-707-1561. Shout outs to the people who occasionally just call that number.
They leave messages?
Don't leave a voicemail.
You should leave a voicemail.
One time someone did, and it was your, I'm not going to give them the time of day, but good, good luck have fun wasting your time.
I'm going to finish chewing this and we do a podcast.
Sounds good.
Should we also do, should we give ourselves 10 minutes? I know this is a spoiler cast, but I feel like
I'm chewing. You want to give yourself 10 minutes. This is probably going after, right?
Yeah, this will go after.
Give yourselves the final 10 minutes of this MP3. Put it on the clock, Kato.
10 minutes.
You start?
We're good.
You started?
Yeah. Let's go.
Yeah, Bernie won Nevada. And not just won, but
handily.
Yeah.
Better than expected.
Crushed the field. And last I saw was Ratfuck is going to fall out of contention for the 15%, so that's satisfying.
He'll still get county delegates, right? That's the way that works. He'll still get county,
yes.
But
yeah,
it's
he's
still
going to
nice.
get something out of it. No, yeah, and it's a convincing win, which Bernie didn't have. Iowa basically split. You can make arguments in a lot of directions, but it was not clear cut for anyone. And New Hampshire was closer than any of us would have liked. Yeah. Though I guess shout outs to Amy Klobuchar for surging and taking away Pete's votes, which seems to be what occurred in New Hampshire. Yep. And let Bernie kind of skate around it. But yeah, like I am allowing myself to not just believe, but like be fairly confident at this point. And the only thing I think stands in the way of him stumbling at all is just how South Carolina goes next week. And I don't think he needs to win. I think if he wins, it's over. It's a knockout blow.
Yeah.
I think if he gets close enough for people to be like, yo, if Biden is lost that much, like, if he's within a point or two, I think there becomes a narrative where Biden's back in it, but that's going to have eroded so much support that I think the difference between South Carolina win and a South Carolina draw is Bernie going to get a majority, or is he going to getting a plurality? And if he gets a plurality, how big is that plurality? But I'm still
there is a
increasingly of the
number at which that plurality becomes insurmountable rhetorically, even with a contested convention. Like there's a number in which I imagine the kind of establishment would absolutely
eventually just goes, yeah,
but
fuck it.
But
Look,
there's
the
a point at
Republicans did
which-
it to Trump. We can do it to Sanders. Let's just get behind him and
exactly.
look, we're gonna stock that administration
That's
full
like
of centrists
40
anyway
something-
because it's hard.
Right, exactly, right? Like the people who we're gonna get our judges, we're gonna get our da-da-da. Like the
You move to the
body
end game, which is what
yes.
the Republicans did was like just settle, fuck it, okay, we're gonna just get behind Trump, and then. I don't mean to like throw cold water on what Bernie will be able to accomplish if he makes it over the finish line, but like staffing an administration, a government is like huge, broad. There is going to be institutional rot that he can do nothing about, and that his presence would merely be the beginning of a paradigm shift as opposed to a conclusion of it. And so like the centrists, like the establishment, will get theirs. Even if it still pushes the ball forward in a way that is, momentous and an amazing achievement.
Patrick, I couldn't believe you use a slur like centrist.
Fuck.
This is happening now.
Tweets.
It's a lot right now out there.
It's right now watching certain members of like the
pundit class, the
pundit class, like every time what's his name? Chris Matthews.
Chris
He's my cipher for interpreting all of these. Like, I feel like you have to pick someone, and you just want to interpret all events through them. And Chris Matthews out here saying, actually, Bernie. Like Bernie taking the front runner status is a little bit like the Nazis. Is like okay,
let's
go.
To chill, Chris. You have to fucking chill. I'm also pretty confident, but it's definitely like nerve wracking, and I think that a lot of that nervous energy for me comes from the vulnerability that comes along with hope, right? Which is like, the last time I think I felt like this around a national campaign was 2008 Barack Obama, which even then was like, I know in my heart of hearts, this is not going to change the world overnight, but wow, I'm really energized. And the difference is, at that point, it felt, by the time it was happening, it felt like less could go wrong in terms of inter-party fuckery, and other things just coming up, and the world is so, and also there was less stimulus at the time, right? Now, if you want that permanent feed on, you can just have it. You can just constantly be getting it drilled into your brain. And even though there was social media in 2008, it's such a different beast
it's so
now.
different.
It's
There was no leftist Twitter. There was no, I was in an
IRC
Twitter
channel. Do you know what I mean? But that's such a different thing than being in even just being in the Waypoint Discord, which has like a U.S. politics and an election like channel. It's just like a constant feed of interesting things. It like takes that are interesting, stats that are interesting. Doomsaying if it feels like it's the right thing, really positive stuff, and like if you want to be plugged in, you can be, and it is exhausting. I do my best to only let myself be plugged in there on a primary or caucus day, but it can be tough.
Or even just like access to the
Nevada
news feed,
right? Even just that,
like not having cable back then because you were like I was a student. I didn't have cable. I didn't have any access to like as many. Like I opened Twitter and there was like the little live thing at the top, and I could click it and see all of the major news company cable news companies just streaming it.
Yeah, totally.
And I watched that for
the other
way
side
too
of it
many
is
hours on Saturday.
Right. Well, the other half of it is nice to be able to go to twitch.tv/Bernie_Sanders and watch the rally live with because a lot of the stuff wouldn't get carried on the full network. You would get the 10-minute victory speech, but not the prelim speech, and then you know what I mean?
Right.
So that stuff has been fun. Anyway, I think we're gonna do it. Keep our heads down. Keep caucusing. Keep
you can turn it.
canvassing,
You can
rather.
and also just I see a lot of people jittery about social media. Like, just turn it off. Like, you're not helping Bernie's chances by making yourself anxious and reading other people being anxious. There are no, I get it, but I mean, like, there are I've heard from you being like excited, nervous is different than I think some people who like take it a lot harder, and it's like it's okay, like to just turn off the hose.
To be clear, I am also nervous because, and I was just talking to my mom about this last night, because she was saying the same thing about the Nevada stuff, was like, wow, this is really exhausting. And the thing I told her was like, it's not just that like, oh, we're hopeful for a candidate that we like might win. It's that it's that a vision of a different world comes into being a little bit when you can think about your own personal history of medical bills. Like my grandfather died of lung cancer and had to work through most of that lung cancer. Like, had to go to his job while he was fighting lung cancer because otherwise he would have lost his medical care and couldn't have paid to fight his lung cancer.
My mom's best friend, as her husband was dying, she got divorced from him so that when he died, she didn't inherit his medical debt.
It's fucked. It's fucked. It's fucked. And so, like, to start to see a little bit of it, to imagine the sorts of changes that would come from those plans being enacted is one already big thing. But then to think about the generational change that could come with reigniting the left, beginning kind of investing in fights around ecological change, to look at the ways in which particular anti-racist policies could be put into place, pro-immigration policies that protect the poor, the homeless. Like, these are real things. Like the idea of putting into place, giving power to the sorts of people who want to fight against homelessness in this country, who don't see it as a blight in the sense of we need to hide it, we need to cover it up, we need to push people away, but as something that can be addressed and people can be helped. Like, that requires a big movement and a shift in what is politically prioritized, and to imagine that is part of why the anxiety exists, because suddenly then you have to imagine, oh wait, no, we might actually just get this forever. We can see it. It's real. It's real. We can get there. It is within our grasp, not just through this election, but through the work that comes after the election. But you have to get this first, and I think a lot of that spikes the depression and anxiety around the way the world is now. And it's a slog. It's a slog.
Yeah,
I think the one bright thing about the like current work being done is that it's caused such a groundswell in like new registrations, like people voting for the first time, which feels like kind of like, all right, next time around, like there will be seats to gain in Congress. So like, it's like, even if somehow it like doesn't work out, I feel like there's still enough of a beginning of a like broader movement that
or like
things are going to start changing.
I don't want to say no one has cared about these issues. Obviously, people have been working against things like homelessness and racism for a long time. Bernie didn't invent that stuff, obviously. But it's the fact that a success here, with each win, with the groundswell and growth of the movement, is a way of indicating to the rest of the world and to the people here, like, we do care about this stuff. If you care about it, get involved. Come through. We need your help to address these things. Yeah. And the hope is that you're building an infrastructure that will stick around and that will be able to like bring in that added, power of people to actually address this stuff.
Totally.
Patrick, you said one more thing.
The last thing I want to say is that it's become very real for me now that one of my like personal ciphers is my mom, and just like where her level of interest on various things is. And she finally was like, had a conversation with like her friends, and they're all, quote unquote liberal, but like not as all plugged in. And she was finally like, all right, can you explain Bernie to me? And I was like, shit, like this is getting real. Like, okay, like now, like the fact that this type of person is now queuing in. And the one thing I would tell, if you have people like that in your life, maybe you don't feel comfortable making the argument, or that's like tough to find the language. Anderson Cooper did an interview with Bernie after the Nevada caucuses. It's like a little 10-minute, like little bit talking about him, his policies, his worldview. I don't blame some people, like my mom would say, like, he's kind of abrasive to watch and listen to. I agree. It can feel like he is shouting at you, and maybe that's not the best way if you aren't already on his side to be convinced of his policies. This is more just normal Bernie talking and explaining his stuff in a way that's different than the stump speech. And it's I don't know, it's worth watching if you're already a fan, just to see a different version of him than we normally see, because we usually see the stump speech guy. But if you're looking to try and introduce Bernie curious Democrats or liberals who are trying to understand where we might be going and they aren't necessarily on board yet, the Anderson Cooper interview is I think worth watching.
Totally. We should do this Outer Wilds podcast. Yeah. All right. This is going up today, right, Kato?
Yes. Okay. Yes.
Did y'all get the questions doc that I put together? It's mostly for me, but it's good to have it anyway. Just
yeah.
Okay.
World premiere.